We have before us the opportunity to forge for ourselves and for future generations a new world order.
New world order.
New world order.
This is a moment to seize. The kaleidoscope has been shaken. The pieces are in flux. Soon they will settle again. Before they do, let us reorder this world around us.
A new world order.
A world where the United Nations is poised to fulfill the historic vision of its founders.
Nevertheless, the United States is in a key position to shape this so that the problem of the Bush presidency will be the emergence of a new international order.
The first decade of the 21st century, that out of what will be seen as the greatest restructuring of the global economy, a new world order was created.
Documenting the crisis of our republic.
The very word secrecy is repugnant in a free and open society. And we are, as a people, inherently and historically opposed to secret societies, to secret oaths, and to secret proceedings.
Waging war on the New World Order.
The councils of government, we must guard against the acquisition of unwarranted influence, whether sought or unsought, by the military-industrial complex.
This is Govern America with Darren Weeks and Vicky Davis.
And we are live from FEMA Regions 5 and 10. This is Govern America. I'm Darren Weeks. Vicky Davis is here as well. It is the 18th of July, 2020, as we once again document the crisis of our republic, the undermining of our national, state, and individual autonomy. Good to have you with us, everyone, once again, as we have a lot of information to share with you today. I know Vicky's been doing a lot of research, and so we have a lot of her stuff to present to you today. And so I think it's time to get right started. Jump right into it. Hey, good morning, Vicky.
Good morning. Sounds good to me. I've been buried deep into it, so.
Yeah,
you know.
Yeah. It's certainly there's no shortage of things going on. That's for sure. And one of the things before we get to the major meat and potatoes of the program, I wanted to share with you. You know, Agenda 21, the United Nations Blueprint for Sustainable Development, is always something that's continuing to evolve, and every aspect of our lives are going to be affected by Agenda 21. And we've talked about it many, many times over the years, constantly, without stopping, because it's all-encompassing. And certainly your diet, the way of life, the way you live. I mean, you know, they're talking about having a heat index here in southern Michigan of over 100 degrees today. And they want to eliminate home and workplace air conditioning as a part of Agenda 21. I can't imagine going through this type of weather without air conditioning. And this is the northern states. I hate to see what the southern states would be like.
Yeah, well, you know, people will just die, and that serves another agenda. So there you go.
Yeah, and one of the things that they are trying to prevent people from doing is eating meat. There's a big war on meat right now, and they have lab-grown meat. You know, in recent days we've seen Burger King sell the Impossible Whopper, which is impossible to figure out what it is because it was grown in a lab. And they brag about look how similar it is to real meat. Well, I don't want something similar to real meat. I want the real deal. And I think a lot of people are like that. I think there was probably a spike in the Impossible Whopper when they first came out with it, because just pure curiosity. People want to know. They want to know what it's like, but then after they've had their first Impossible Whopper, they go probably back to the original because they don't know what it is. Why have a substitute when you can have the real deal? Well, increasingly, I think they're going to try to make meat rare. They're going, no pun intended, they're going to try to make it rare to find. Rare, you know, in other words, it's going to be so expensive. And I think that's exactly what they're going to do with the air conditioning.
And artificial scarcity.
Artificial scarcity, exactly. It's just like with the electric bills. Obama said, you know, under my plan of cap and trade, the electricity rates are going to necessarily skyrocket. When they create artificial scarcity, they drive up the prices of everything and make it hard for the commoner. The ordinary people, they claim they're always trying to help. They make it hard for them to be able to afford whatever the product is. So,
and it's also a war on all of the businesses that person does business with, because the increase in utility rates causes a decrease in spendable income in other areas.
Good
so
point.
So it's a ripple effect.
Absolutely. Yeah, and it ripples throughout the whole economy. And increasingly, I mean, they're saying COVID cases are spiking now. They're saying they're skyrocketing. But COVID cases aren't the only thing. The climate alarmists are back again, Vicky. I mean, I never really left. But now they're yelling again about methane gas and the belching cows. I mean, cows have been belching since the beginning of time. There's always been belching cows, but now they're coming back again. This is the Indian news service, WION. I think it's called WION or something like that. It must be relatively new because I've just recently started seeing things from this outlet. And so they do a lot of good anti-China stuff, I've noticed, because China and India seem to have a rift going. Been going for a while. But now they're coming out with the same kind of climate nonsense, and here's an example of it.
Methane emissions have hit the roof. Guess who is being blamed for this? Cows. Yes, cows burp a lot of methane. 2 studies suggest that a cow is as dangerous as a fuel-guzzling car. A belching cow has become a problem. But we humans must blame ourselves for global warming, not some cow in a faraway ranch. Here's why.
If cows could read news, they would be hurling a string of abuses at climate scientists. Obviously, punctuated by several anger-filled moos. Methane emissions are at a record high because a burping cow is like a polluting cow.
A burping cow is a polluting cow.
Sure, the cow is innocent, but the blame comes with evidence. The cow's belching is pushing up methane levels. That's according to research done at Stanford University. Rob Jackson, the lead researcher, says people joke about burping cows without realizing how big the source really is. Cattle is the main reason for the rise in methane levels. A cow's methane emissions are as dangerous as fossil fuel burning. It's a worry as methane is 28 times more efficient than carbon dioxide in trapping heat. This greenhouse gas can cause global temperatures to rise by 3 to 4 degrees Celsius by the year 2100. Agriculture contributes 2/3 to methane emissions in South Asia, South America, and Africa. Farms with livestock are causing methane levels to spike. Farm waste disposal is also a major concern.
Now, they have no sources for any of this stuff.
Even spreading manure around a field rather than piling it up in a corner can help. But fossil fuel consumption is equally to blame. Yes, the pandemic has caused a small decline in emissions. But the long-term chart does not show a pretty picture. Annual methane emission has gone up by 9% since the year 2000. Europe is the only bright spot in the world. The only region where methane emission has gone down. They eat less beef and drive cleaner cars. That's all that may be required to cut methane emissions. Cows burp. They can't be blamed entirely. It is but a natural bodily phenomenon. The major emitter is us humans. Our cars, our food habits. If we want to address global warming, it's best to begin with ourselves. Bureau Report, WION, World is One.
So there you go.
All animals produce pollution Therefore, we should kill all animals.
Well,
and then we won't have any pollution.
They're blaming the people, of course. It's the evil people. It seems to me like if people are that bad for the planet, then why bother forcing them to wear a face diaper for coronavirus? Just let nature take its course.
Well, let me ask you this. Do whales poop in the ocean?
I'm sure they do.
Okay, well, there you go. Do bears do you-know-what in the woods? Yes, they do. So
they're not trying
what's the difference between a bear and a cow?
They're not trying to change the bear's behavior. That's the We don't eat bear. If we ate bear for dinner, then bears would be evil too.
I tried eating a piece of bear meat. It was horrible. Horrible.
That's why bears are fine. We want to save bears. Hey, but don't worry, Vicky. They've got the solution on tap. Get ready. Here's your new diet.
Meet the palate pioneers. These creepy, crawly converts may just have the future of food in the palm of their hands.
We're definitely at the cutting edge. Our time has come.
Bugs are definitely the future.
Around the world, 2 billion people eat insects as part of their regular diet. Eating insects is commonplace in lots of the world. It's just never caught on in the U.S. But some entrepreneurs think we're ready. In fact, the past 5 years have been a roller coaster of insect farming booms and busts.
Insects are rich in protein. They do not need much space to grow and breed. They feed on food waste, and they can recombine and produce protein in a very efficient way.
Crickets, to start, are chock full of fat, protein, vitamins, and fiber. They emit
a lot of crunchy goodness there.
Fewer greenhouse gases than cattle, and they use a lot less land.
Eating bugs can help the environment. Or how about this one from the New York Times? Why aren't we eating more insects?
The question really is, why wouldn't you eat insects?
There isn't a why not.
Insect is going to be a part of our diet, daily diet. We think that it's going to take lots of time. We still have to educate people to eat insects.
Our mission is to raise awareness and appreciation for edible insects through delicious, creative, and educational programming.
Educational.
What we need to...
Ooh, educational programming, Vicky. Programming. Yeah, key word there, programming.
You know what? I was just thinking that before I would eat insects, I would track down one of those biologists and eat him.
There you go. A little cannibalism there.
Address that is a
why not?
Well, it may come to that.
Drastic shift in perception from insects as pests to edible insects, something that is delicious. And it's like, help me think of new words when you're sitting around with your friends, and if you're over 21 and you're having a drink, you're like, let's try to think of a new word for crickets for entomophagy. Let's try to think of a new term for eating insects besides what's that word again? And you guys can really start helping us. I believe that edible insects will be widely accepted and normalized in America within 5 to 10 years.
So someday soon, you might be chowing down on this sandwich with mealworm garnish, then washing that down with a frosty beverage topped with crunchy crickets.
We're using really high-quality feed and really amazing practices to kind of get the best flavor out of these crickets. Most of the ones that we raise at this facility are intended for the gourmet market.
In fact, I want everybody to eat insects. I want McDonald's to sell the McCricket, where you go in there and you just crunch into a nice, juicy cricket sandwich. We do have concerns about disease jumping from animals like pigs and cows to humans, but there are no worries about a disease jumping from an insect to humans. The more evolutionary distant we are from our food source, the less danger there is.
We do black ants and sesame seeds with crickets mixed in with the green tea soba noodles, and then we garnish with chapelline crickets.
Kind of like a hard raisin. The seasoning's great.
Seasoning's great.
Oh, nobody likes me. Everybody hates me. Guess I'll eat some bugs.
So there's your 21st century diet. Congratulations.
Yeah.
The world
this,
under
this
Agenda
is
21.
Really progress, isn't it?
Yeah, the world under Agenda 21. There you go.
You know what? We have been in a state of emergency since 9/11. And everything they've done is as if, like the Green Deal says, we're going to die in 12 years if we don't if we don't change the way that we live, if we don't change everything about the way that we live.
Yeah, it seems like the sky has been falling for a long time, hasn't it?
Yeah, it sure has.
And it still hasn't got here.
And you know what? The underlying every single disaster story that we deal with is a computer system. They are developing a system, national or global. Anytime you hear a disaster story, immediately start looking for the system.
Well, that's very well said. That's very well said. Because it's true. That's exactly what they're doing. I mean, and I was just explaining to my wife this morning as we were talking about some of the stuff, or getting ready to talk about, we're going to be getting into the 911 system and the next generation 911 system and all of the intelligence stuff that connects to Palantir and all the profiling and stuff that's going on today's show. And I was explaining some of that to her. It was, it's technocracy. And I was explaining what technocracy really is. It's been said that it's ruled by technical experts, but I look at it as being a rule by algorithms, because that's what we're facing in the 21st century. As time goes on, time progresses, increasingly people are going to be ruled. There already are, without even knowing it, in many systems. But increasingly people are going to be controlled by computer algorithms. And that's ultimately the goal in society, is to automate everything, to have metrics that phone home. It's mentioned in Agenda 21, information for decision making. They have all these points of data that they look at, and as things progress, it'll be harder and harder to have any real freedom, because everything is going to be automated and controlled by these algorithms.
And any real competence, because the people who are supposedly the professionals that you will interact with, they are just your interface to a computer system. Like the doctor, for example. The plan is to replace doctors with physician's assistants and nurse practitioners who will use a computer system to for the diagnosis and for the suggested prescriptions and so forth. Or in some cases, remote connection to another doctor. Mm-hmm. So you won't even get access to real experts. There'll be an interface there that, the person that you interface with has access to a computer system that is directing their activities.
Absolutely. And computer systems aren't that great, especially when they're hackable. And regardless of how hardened they become, they can be vulnerable. We've seen that this week. Vicky, on Thursday, various high-profile and verified accounts on Twitter were hacked with a message urging people to donate Bitcoin to a certain address. Bill Gates was one of those ones that were hacked, but there were many, many others. I was joking to my wife that, here's this computer nerd, Bill Gates, and he can't keep his Twitter account secure. Well, apparently it was Twitter itself that was hacked, and apparently it wasn't the individual accounts. Anyway, so Twitter had a major compromise.
The FBI now investigating a recent security breach at Twitter, which has many questioning the app's security ahead of November's election. Yahara Jaquez has the latest.
The extraordinary hacking spree that hit Twitter, targeting some of the most high-profile accounts, is drawing urgent questions about the platform's security and resilience. The company said late Wednesday that hackers took control of employee credentials to hijack the accounts of some of the most prominent political and business figures in the U.S., from Barack Obama and Joe Biden to Bill Gates and Warren Buffett. In a series of tweets, the company said, quote, "We detected what we believe to be a coordinated social engineering attack by people who successfully targeted some of our employees with access to internal systems and tools." The company's statement confirmed the fears of security experts that the service itself, rather than users, had been compromised. Posing as celebrities and the wealthy, those responsible for the attack asked followers to send Bitcoin to a series of addresses.
I don't think this particular attack has any links to foreign nations.
Mikko Hyponen, a cybersecurity expert, says what the hackers chose to do with their access tells us a lot about who they could be.
Remembering they could do anything on Twitter, they chose to use these quick hack mechanisms of making a little bit of Bitcoin. They could have sold this access to a number of places, for example, to foreign intelligence agencies. They could have used this access to announce a merger and acquisition in the name of Bill Gates or Elon Musk, which would have immediately affected stock prices. This was most likely an opportunistic hack, most likely done by some younger people, and this was the first thing they could imagine to make some money with.
Wednesday's hack, the worst to date for Twitter, is also raising questions about Twitter's resilience in the run-up to the U.S. presidential election. Its role as a key communications platform for politicians and public officials, including President Donald Trump, has led to fears hackers could wreak havoc with the November election or otherwise compromise national security. After the day's chaos, Twitter CEO Jack Dorsey said, quote, "Tough day for us at Twitter. We all feel terrible this happened."
Too many people are placing too much emphasis on these services. When you think about it, I mean, when you really stop to think, what could these people have done? And they're going through a few of the scenarios there. Excuse me. What if they had gotten on Donald Trump's Twitter account and said that the nuclear missiles are on their way? I mean, this could have been very, very bad.
You're right. Yes, you're right.
I mean, a lot of people are placing a lot of emphasis on Twitter and the belief, the faith that when somebody tweets something out, that's really them on there. But given the fact that this has been put up a lot more, it's just chilling to think about. This being a channel of communication.
I'm surprised it hasn't happened before this, actually. Computer systems that operate with everybody and his brother having access are not secure. Mm-hmm. They're not, because and it doesn't make any difference. I know that people at Stanford and Harvard, they like to think that they have a particular kind of genius that isn't out in the world, but how many times have we seen where a teenager or a young person has hacked a system? It happens, and it will continue to happen until they actually have real security. But I'm not sure they could ever have the kind of security that they need to protect what really sensitive information that they have just opened up to the world.
It almost sounds like somebody got access on the shell level, basically the shell level access of Twitter, where they could have changed any account they wanted to. It sounds like they just opted for some high-profile accounts because that's what they thought would get the most bang for the buck in terms of their Bitcoin.
Well, you know what? A lot of hackers do it for bragging rights.
Yeah.
Just to be able to say,
that.
I hacked this.
Yeah, they probably better not be bragging too much.
Well, their friends know. They don't do it for the public. They do it for their friends. And I bet if you took, if you went down into the deep dark web, you could probably, that would be the path where you would find out who the hacker was.
I'm betting the FBI is going to be spending a lot of time. Well, they do spend a lot of time in the deep dark web. Mm-hmm. I'm quite sure about that. But anyway, of course, no hacking story, Vicky, would be complete without blaming Russia for something.
The U.S., UK, and Canada allege Russia is attempting to steal information about a coronavirus vaccine. In a joint statement today, the three countries claim a hacking group known as App29 is behind attacks targeting vaccine research and development organizations. Countries believe the group is likely operating as part of the Russian government. Officials condemned the attempted cyber breaches, calling them, quote, despicable attacks against those doing vital work to combat the pandemic.
Yeah, last week it was Russia was putting hits on U.S. troops. This week it's a different thing. So we always got to make, Russia, 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 bad, bad, bad.
Those pesky Ruskies.
That's right. So I'll tell you what, we're just about up to the break already. We're going to get into the COVID-19 thing when we come back, and the fact that you found that story in Britain about how they were, there's the numbers. There were oddities with the numbers. Well, the same thing's happening here in the United States. We're told that there are spikes going on in Florida, especially. Florida is a big hot spot. They like to use the word hot spot. So hot spot is there's a big hot spot going on in Florida, or several hot spots, and but there's a lot of there's a lot of bad things going on in terms of the reporting. Let's put it that way.
The whole COVID thing is a bad thing.
Yeah, exactly. Well, when you've monetized bad reporting, you're going to get bad reporting. It's public policy 101. Things that you incentivize, you get more of. Imagine that. Yep. All right, bottom of the hour. Let's go ahead and take the break, and we'll come back and hit the ground running. Stay with us, folks. It's going to be a busy show. This is Govern America.
Where the spooks go to find out what's really going on. This is Govern America.
Welcome back to the broadcast. This is Govern America. I'm Darren Weeks. Vicky Davis is here as well. The website for the show is governamerica.com. That's governamerica.com. My email address is radio@governamerica.com. Vicky, go ahead and give your information out, please.
Okay, my website is technocratic-tyranny.com, and my email address is eyeswideoopen @channelingreality.com, which is the name of my old website, channelingreality.com. And it's still up there, still with a lot of research. So,
yeah, very good. Very important stuff on both websites. So check all that stuff out, and you can get to it. We put the links for her site along with ours in the show notes every week. So check it out, if you would, please. Continuing on here, I see from WorldNet Daily, we see there's a jaw-dropping decline in births set to have disastrous global impact. They say some nations, including Spain and Japan, could see their populations fall by half, which is exactly according to plan. That's exactly what the globalists want. They say a study published in The Lancet this week examines global trends in fertility rates and offers a stark prediction of what might lie ahead. The study forecasts population growth and decline through 2100 and found that almost every country could face diminishing populations. By 2100, some nations, including Spain and Japan, could see their populations fall by half. Researchers at the University of Washington's Institute for Health Metrics and Evaluation showed that in 1950, women had an average of 4.7 children in their lifetimes. By 2017, the number dropped to 2.4, and researchers predict the number of children per woman will continue to decline, likely falling to below 1.7 by 2100. The global population is anticipated to peak at 9.7 billion around 2064, before falling down to 8.8 billion by the end of the century. And I got to say, Vicky, I seriously question whether the population is anywhere close to that worldwide. How do we know? How do we know
right.
what the real population numbers are. We're supposed to believe that the United Nations is counting the global population accurately. I don't think we can rely upon the United Nations for anything.
I don't think we can rely on any institution for accurate statistics, because including our own government.
Correct.
Yeah, because there is a political agenda of depopulation.
Yep.
And of automating everything in society so that, they can have a central command and control system. I don't know if you remember that picture or not, but of one of the Saudi princes and Donald Trump with their hands on a globe.
Oh, yes.
In some kind of a command and control center.
Yes.
That is the vision of the technology people, Silicon Valley and Harvard University, and at the intellectual level, that is their view of how the world is going to operate. They are at the console, at the command console, and they will control everything.
Yeah, very good
the
metaphor.
Horizontal, the vertical, everything.
Yep.
And so, all people need to do is to just sit back and allow themselves to be managed.
Yes.
And allow their children to be managed and raised as according to specifications.
Yes.
And everything will be just fine.
We have to go within these strict parameters. Strict parameters.
Right. Always measuring the indicators.
Mm-hmm. There you go. I mentioned before the break we were going to talk about COVID-19 and the fraudulent numbers. The states here in the United States, they're moving back. Looks like to me that they're moving back toward another lockdown. This seems to be the case. I know Texas has been moving that way. We have a mandatory mask executive order. The Queen, who nobody can seem to do anything about here in Michigan, Gretchen Whitmer, she is continuing to issue her executive decrees, and she has now decreed that all businesses, any public place, you can be fined $500 if you are not wearing a face diaper, and businesses can lose their licenses if they don't enforce it and make you wear a face diaper. Go ahead.
Same thing is happening here in Idaho. The mayor of Boise made masks mandatory, and just recently there was the public health department had a meeting where they were going to make a decision on mandatory masks, but Ammon Bundy and his group went to the meeting, and they wouldn't take no for an answer in terms of going into the meeting without a mask. He said, "You don't have a right to tell me to wear a mask." So,
yeah,
it's happening here too.
Yeah, it's happening all over the place. I'm still seeing some lag enforcement. I went to, I won't say where, the big box retailer yesterday, and I walked in. I had one ready in case they told me to put it on, but I walked around the store, didn't have it on. I was fine. And I noticed a lot of other people, even the employees, who were undoubtedly supposed to have them on. They had them. They were wearing them on their chin, many of them. So lax enforcement is going to be the case wherever you go. People don't want this, and I can't help but believe, Vicky, that we're somehow being transitioned into something less than people. I mean, it feels to me, I could even tolerate it. I could comply. I hate that word, but I could comply if I really believed there was a real threat by not complying and that it was temporary. That's the important thing right there, that it was temporary. But I believe this feels to me like we're being bullied into a transitional phase that literally is changing who we are as a people.
I absolutely agree with you. And in my area, the health department in this area considered mandatory masks, and they declined to do that because I think they know they would have a fight on their hands, because about half the people that I see, they're not wearing masks. And so it would be a fight. And I'd be right there on the front lines of it, because I won't wear a mask. If I were going into a hospital, I would wear a mask. But to go grocery shopping, I don't think so.
I don't even think in going into a hospital. I mean, unless you're operating on a patient, the main thing is don't get right up in people's faces. I could see if you were right up in somebody's face, yeah, you're probably you could spread something. But this whole thing is, I mean, going into a hospital, there's a lot of germs floating around there. I don't think wearing a face diaper is going to stop those germs from coming in they're not going to stop them from coming in. The only thing they're going to stop is if you sneeze, your sneeze won't go out. But other than that, I just don't see the benefit. And I see a whole lot of downsides.
I don't either, and I think the whole thing is BS. I think the COVID-19 thing was a big systems rollout for telemedicine, to make telemedicine palatable. But I don't think that COVID-19 is a real thing in terms of a serious disease. I saw a statistic today, and I forget what state it was, but they had like 30,000 cases of people who tested positive for COVID, and out of that 30,000, 230 died.
Yeah.
That's less than 1%.
Yes.
And if you examine that less than 1%, I bet that most of them were either elderly or had underlying conditions and or both.
Comorbidities is the word they like to use.
Right.
Yeah, absolutely. And that's the case everywhere. But we know that I don't even pay attention to the case numbers myself because I know they're fraudulent. I know they're all BS. When you're paying the hospital to diagnose and say people have it when they don't, it's BS. And by the way, that Dr. Scott Stevens or whatever his name is, the Minnesota doctor that was coming out, and he's the reason why it's Scott Jensen, I think. Scott Jensen. He's the reason why we knew about the $13,000 that the hospitals were making per case, and the $39,000 when the patient goes on a ventilator. Now he's being investigated by the medical board. They're going after him now for speaking out. So this is the kind of bullying that's going on everywhere. Anyway, I don't like citing CVS, but this is a pretty good roundup of what's going on across the states.
The coronavirus crisis has taken another staggering turn for the worse. More than 77,000 new cases were reported yesterday. That beats the old one-day record by nearly 10,000. The daily death toll it's rising to is more than 900, including a record number 156 that was in Florida.
Meanwhile, the national debate over wearing masks is intensifying as large parts of the economy remain at a standstill. Our lead national correspondent, David Begnaud, is at the port of Miami where cruise ships are staying at the dock for now. David, for how much longer?
Through September 30th, Anthony, the CDC is the one that...
This guy's got his face diaper on and looks ridiculous.
...issued a no-sale order.
Look, he's standing out there by himself and he's wearing a face diaper.
You mentioned the mask. I have to tell you, from being here for the last 2 or 3 weeks, there's a lot of people walking around here that are not wearing masks. And in talking to business owners and political leaders, a lot of them are asking each other the same question. Are we going to go through another shutdown? Listen to the mayor of Miami.
I also want to stress to them the severity and the seriousness that we find ourselves in.
The mayor of Miami, Francis Suarez, says he's meeting with business leaders today to talk about the possibility of shutting down again.
We're not sure exactly if there are any tools left in the toolkit, frankly.
His neighbor to the east, Miami Beach Mayor Dan Gelber, says avoiding another lockdown depends on the actions of all Miami-Dade County residents.
If people don't wear masks, the decision is going to be made for all of us, because the trajectory we've been going on for the last couple of weeks is unsustainable.
Florida does not have a statewide mask mandate, and there's still intense resistance to masks. Look at these images from a Royal Palm Beach Walmart. The Palm Beach County Sheriff's Department says this man, seen pushing an elderly man in a wheelchair, pulled a gun on another shopper after a confrontation that happened over masks. In Utah, there was a county meeting about masks for school children, that was adjourned early because the meeting itself was in violation of health guidelines.
This is the exact opposite of what we need to be doing.
People were sitting arm to arm in this packed meeting, and nobody had any masks on.
We are supposed to be physically distancing, wearing masks.
The governors of Arkansas and Colorado announced mask mandates of their own Thursday. They're now required in at least 30 states. Meanwhile, CVS and Target joined the growing list of companies moving forward with mask mandates for all customers.
What the scientists are telling us is that the right thing to do is to wear a mask.
In the city of Atlanta, Mayor Keisha Lance Bottoms has essentially told Governor Brian Kemp, bring it on. The governor has filed a lawsuit against her and the city council to block the mayor's mask mandate. He says the mayor's order is more restrictive than his and claims Mayor Bottoms has exceeded her authority.
I am not afraid of the city being sued, and I'll put our policies up against anyone's any day of the week.
There are at least 15 other cities and counties in the state of Georgia that had implemented their own mask orders before the governor overruled them. One more thing before we go. Southeast of here in Puerto Rico, the governor there has partially rolled back their reopening after a tenfold increase in cases. If you fly to Puerto Rico now, you've got to show up with a negative PCR test result. And Tony, what's interesting is as of the last few days, the majority of people arriving in Puerto Rico are coming from Florida, an epicenter of the pandemic.
Yeah, it could be a problem. David, thank you very much.
Could be a problem. Could be a problem. We might have a problem here.
The whole thing is just so stupid. Step outside and put this whole scenario into a fictional movie, and you'd walk out because it's too stupid. Everybody's going to wear masks, for when we know that the statistics that are being reported are inaccurate.
Yeah, but we still have to
people
pretend.
Are dying. I mean, it's just. I have a tough time dealing with stupidity.
Yeah.
I really have a hard time with it.
Well, we seem to have an awful lot of it. I can tell you right now. Not on this show.
That's the epidemic. That is the epidemic. And we should stamp it out.
Since we're on the topic of stupidity, they mentioned in that report Atlanta Mayor Keisha Bottoms. She appeared on MSNBC and actually had the audacity to blame lawful gun owners for the rise of shootings in her city, as if the criminals who commit illegal shootings are somehow going to take the time to get an open carry permit.
In the past month, Atlanta's shootings are up 124% compared to the same time last year. What is going on?
What's happening in Atlanta is what's happening across the country. There is a combination of things. There are these systemic issues, including lack of access to health care, including people being unemployed.
Lack of access to health care is causing people to shoot each other, ladies and gentlemen.
People are dying of COVID-19. We witnessed
COVID-19. People dying of COVID-19 causing the shootings in the streets.
Justices that have happened in front of our eyes, and it's boiling over into our streets. It's happening in Atlanta. It's happening across the country. The irony of it is that our overall crime rate is down by 18%. But in Georgia, an open carry state, people are allowed to walk down the streets with assault weapons, and we don't have probable cause to stop them. And you don't get to pick and choose which demographic you get to stop and question as to why they're walking in our streets with open weapons. It is an issue in Atlanta. It's an issue in other cities across this nation, and it is one that we take very seriously. But this notion that somehow the governor is helping us with law and order is false. He has military tanks in front of state buildings. This is a playbook. This is a play out of the Nixon playbook.
Okay, anyways, he's got military tanks in front of the buildings. The COVID's there. All this stuff is going on. And, by those evil open carry people, they're causing people to shoot people in the streets.
I hope that scientists are keeping track of who these people are that are exhibiting public stupidity so that when they die, the scientists can do autopsies on their brain. See if they grew some kind of a block or a box around the thinking part of their brain.
Yeah.
And maybe if they're just operating, at some lower level
We have rampant mental illness in this society, I've noticed.
There is. And a mental, to me, lying to the public on the scale that's being done is mental illness.
It's making people crazy.
It's psychotic. It's like we have our society and institutions, everything have become psychotic.
Yeah. Yeah, I can't argue there. All right, circling back around to the COVID thing, because we were building up, and then I distracted us with that other clip. But Mayor Bottoms is nuts. She's nuts. I like to call her a bottom feeder. That's what she is. Anyway, on Fox News, they had Tucker Carlson's been having a guest host called Brian Kilmeade. He was filling in for Tucker, and they had an affiliate reporter on who had done some analysis on the numbers in Florida and found that none of the negative test results were being reported at some of the testing locations. So this will adversely affect whether or not you have a hot zone, would it not?
Meanwhile, the coronavirus outbreak appears to be getting worse in Florida, although these may be issues with how state laboratories are reporting new cases. WOFL's Robert Gutierrez has the story in our Orlando affiliate. Robert, what did you discover about how they're counting the coronavirus tests?
Yeah, there seems to be confusion, Brian, on so many levels here with the coronavirus numbers. Now, we were tipped off that the numbers didn't quite look right on the state's daily case report. And looking at the breakdown of test labs, I quickly noticed astronomical positivity rates. Now, mind you, Florida's COVID-19 positivity rate is currently at just under 11%, but dozens of labs reported as having 100% positivity. Some only reporting positive cases. The negative column...
100% positivity. 100%. Think of it. People, let that sink in.
Think in. That works.
That's what you call running your mouth without thinking about what you're trying to say. Yeah, let that sink in. What is the likelihood of having 100% positive at any location?
Some only reporting positive cases. The negative column, absolutely blank. So I asked myself, how could 100% of people getting tested at these locations be testing positive? So I reached out to several of our major hospitals in the area, Orlando Health and the Orlando VA, confirming errors in their numbers in that report. So after several requests for comment, today the Florida Department of Health confirming that some small private labs have failed to report negative results, some reporting zero negative results. So the department says it is working to obtain those results and update the statewide report to fix those inaccuracies, but these labs are required by the state to report all test results, positive and negative. A spokesperson, here's something else that kind of adds to the confusion, a spokesperson for Lee Memorial Hospital, that's out of the Fort Myers area, tells me that they believe there is a problem with the state's data gathering system because it is their knowledge, their understanding that the negative results from their hospital were submitted to the state. So, Brian, more questions to be answered, but this news all coming as so many Floridians already are doubting the numbers being reported by the state.
Because your death toll is so low, thankfully. When someone says 98% positive, I meant 9.4%. I want every Fox affiliate at least to do exactly what you did and pour over these numbers and make people back them up.
Okay, so recapping. 2 major hospitals in Orlando have confirmed mistakes, quote-unquote, in coronavirus testing reports. Orlando Health said the positivity rate, as he just pointed out, was actually 9.4%, not the 98% previously reported. Seems to me like there's just a little bit of a difference there, don't you think?
Yeah, and I'd like to point out that kind of mistake, programming mistake, because it's inside the system, is Bush League.
Yeah.
That, that's only the kind of thing that a junior person would do, and it means that they didn't test their system.
I question whether this is really a mistake. That's
another issue too.
I think my hunch is, I can't prove it obviously, but it's too convenient to run up the numbers and because it seems like they want to turn up the dial again and lock everybody back down again. And so they're doing that. But this is not, as you found, Vicky, the over in England, this is going on. Bogus things with the numbers are going on over there as well. You found this clip of the BBC talking about the numbers being wonky across the pond.
We know that 650,000 jobs have been lost across the UK as a result of coronavirus, and the number of people that have applied for what we would call Centrelink, it has doubled in the past 3 months to a normal period. So a lot of employment experts and business groups here are quite worried that there could be a significant unemployment landslide on the way. We always knew this health crisis was going to be serious from a health perspective, but we are starting to feel more and more that economic impact.
We certainly are. And getting back to the health impact, the UK's Health Minister, Matt Hancock, he called for an urgent review into how coronavirus deaths have been recorded in England. He actually said while the NHS currently reports 30 to 35 deaths per day, Public Health England data often shows double that or more.
Yeah, well, where it gets quite confusing is that we do get these daily announcements with the number of deaths. I mean, just today, 114 is the figure, but then about 2 weeks later, you get more official statistics from the Office of National Statistics, and they often include people that may have died in their home or have died away from a health facility, and it becomes very, very complicated. Making things even more complex is that, of course, the UK is broken down between England, Scotland, Northern Ireland and Wales. They all have different ways of reporting their coronavirus numbers, so there are concerns that there has been an undercount in the total death toll in the UK. We know the official one is just over 45,000, streets ahead of the rest of Europe, just behind the United States, which you know is also being very severely impacted by this disease. But there's already talks of some form of independent inquiry in coming months or years.
Well, anyway, you'll dump out of that in the interest of time.
Isn't that a coincidence?
Yes, and they're trying to
exactly the same problem that we're having here.
Well, except that they're saying it's undercounted, which
that doesn't matter.
Sounds an awful lot like we're going to work to build up the numbers. Yeah, isn't that amazing? Anyway, we got the break, top of the hour. Stay with us, folks. We're just getting started, believe it or not, because we got a lot of information to cover as time progresses here on Govern America. Hour number 2 is straight ahead. Don't go away.
Before us the opportunity to forge for ourselves and for future generations a new world order.
New world order.
New world order.
This is a moment to seize. The kaleidoscope has been shaken. The pieces are in flux. Soon they will settle again. Before they do, let us reorder this world around us.
A new world order. A world where the United Nations is poised to fulfill the historic vision of its founders.
Nevertheless, the United States is in a key position to shape this so that the problem of the Bush presidency will be the emergence of a new international order.
The first decade of the 21st century, that out of what will be seen as the greatest restructuring of the global economy, a new world order was created.
Documenting the crisis of our republic.
The very word secrecy is repugnant in a free and open society. And we are, as a people, inherently and historically opposed to secret societies, to secret oaths, and to secret proceedings.
Waging war on the New World Order.
In the councils of government, we must guard against the acquisition of unwarranted influence, whether sought or unsought, by the military-industrial complex.
This is Govern America with Darren Weeks and Vicky Davis.
From FEMA Regions 5 and 10, this is Govern America. I'm Darren Weeks. Vicky Davis is here as well. This is hour number 2 on this 18th of July, 2020. And if you're listening at noon Eastern Daylight Time, we are, in fact, live. We have a call on the line, so let's go ahead and go right to the phones and take the call. Hello, caller. You're on the air.
Morning, Darren, Vicky, Dan in Kentucky.
Yeah, good morning. Good afternoon.
Of course, if they are getting $13,000 and $39,000 per COVID death, then of course they're going to spike the numbers. And of course, people who have the virus, 50% of them estimates have had the virus and never even knew it and got over it. I think I sent you the email from America Can We Talk, Debbie Georganos, who had that Texas doctor on who's using budesonide, and they emptied out a whole ICU hospital unit of COVID patients south of San Antonio. There was also a Louisiana doctor on who was talking about using these inhalers that they use for asthma and with steroids in it. And, of course, when they do that, the virus is gone. The virus is gone when they use hydrochloroquine and other things that do work in building up your immune system. So there's solutions out here, and these doctors who really might not know the agenda but are doing good work, saying that many doctors across the country are finding about this and proposing things that do work. But another email I think I sent you was about spelling COVID backwards. That was Henry Macau, and he had, if you spell COVID backwards, DIVOC is the name of the demon in the Kabbalah, a very important demon.
Wow.
Of course, the Kabbalah says that God is both good and evil, and good and evil are both necessary, and God is good and evil, and that's how everything works out. You have to have both, and it all equals out, and you can be evil and all that. And in the Talmud, they even have a quote that says, God asked the rabbis for advice on difficult questions. So, you know, what an ego to think that you're God or you can be evil, you know. But the article said that there are 4 stages in the initiation into the Satanic New World Order. And the first one is masks.
Yes, I've read that.
Mask is to make you inferior to your masters and stop your right of speech, to close your mouth. The second one is washing hands, and just like Pilate washed his hands over Jesus, and at church services people wash their hands or whatever, it's washing your hands of Christianity and into the Satanic New World Order. The third initiation is social distancing, which breaks up family and any kind of friendship and bonding units and breaks up the mystical body of Christ. And the fourth one is the lockdown, which I look at like the telescreen in 1984, where there's no one between you and your masters telling you what to do. So people have really given up their soul, because the essence of soul, however you look at the universe or religion, is a soul gives you awareness. We call that common sense. In America, we had that when we founded our country. And common sense or awareness is the essence of what your soul is. And people who don't know the agenda, in my opinion, have really given up their awareness and their soul. And by consent, like Albert Pike said, silence or consent, they are becoming part of the New World Order by following orders.
There's no question to me that I believe, well, I can't say there's no question, but I definitely believe there's something to this psychologically, if not spiritually. I think it's more complicated. This is just too important to them. And as much as they like to cite the science, I don't see it. I don't see any scientific proof that any of this makes any sense. As a matter of fact, it looks more like they're making it up as they go along. A lot of the statements that the CDC has issued, they've contradicted themselves later on. And asymptomatic spread. We played the audio. What was it, the World Health Organization or the CDC, Vicky? I'm trying to remember now. That woman that we played a couple of... it's probably been a few shows ago now. And then the next day came back to try to recant it a little bit, even though she never really walked it back. Fauci said they walked that back. But they didn't walk it back.
Stand me somebody with the White House people.
Yeah, she had said that asymptomatic spread was very rare based upon 2 studies.
Oh, now I remember. Yeah, I remember.
Yeah, and then the next day... they tried to say, well, that's just a couple of studies, and we don't pay attention to a couple of studies that haven't yet been fully peer-reviewed and all this stuff. But, in fact, they do pay attention. They live and die by studies all the time.
Yeah. No, she was absolutely clear in what she was saying.
I think I found it. I may have found it. Hold on a second.
Saying.
Yeah, let me...
She was a scientist, so...
Let me see if this is it.
You know what Dan just said.
Can you hear me,
about,
Vicky? Vicky, can you hear me? Hold on. Let me see if this is it.
What proportion of asymptomatic individuals actually transmit? So the way that we look at that is we look at these individuals need to be followed carefully over the course of when they're detected and looking at secondary transmission. We have a number of reports from countries who are doing very detailed contact tracing. They're following asymptomatic cases, they're following contacts, and they're not finding secondary transmission onward. It's very rare. And much of that is not published in the literature. From the papers that are published, there's one that came out from Singapore looking at a long-term care facility. There are some household transmission studies where you follow individuals over time and you look at the proportion of those that transmit onwards. We are constantly looking at this data and we're trying to get more information from countries to truly answer this question. It still appears to be rare that an asymptomatic individual actually transmits onward. What we really want to be focused on is following the symptomatic cases.
Okay, so I'll dump out of it there. But there you go. There it is. It's amazing that I found that. I'll have to save that as an evergreen. Go ahead with what you were saying.
No, I was just going to say what Dan said makes more sense to me than anything, because I do think that the world order people are a cult. And this kind of dialectic is it fits into a scenario that is kind of pseudoscience from my point of view. I'm not a scientist, but I am a logical person, and I can listen to this person and that person and another person, and I'm pretty good at discerning, filtering, and it's all about the systems. As I've said, it's about the systems. And if you remember back on 9/11, when the World Trade Center was demolished, they tried to do another test of what would have been an artificial pandemic. It was anthrax. But all of that kind of got buried in the story of 9/11.
Right.
But that was a hugely important story, and it involved at least one New York City hospital. So it this whole paradigm of emergency preparation and prevention, it's a complete paradigm change from normal life. Normally you don't live your life based on the possibility of a disaster. You kind of plan for it, sort of, depending on the odds of it actually happening. But you don't center your life around the possibility of a pending immediate disaster.
Right. And that's how we're living today.
Yes, everything is a pending, immediate, any second now disaster.
Yeah, so they keep people with their fight or flight systems up, and you can't. I think this is part of what's making society so crazy too, is that they don't have time to let their guard down. They don't have time to be normal and just live every day. They have to constantly be on edge, constantly be worried. What shoe is going to drop next? Yeah, you're right. It affects the psyche. This is a psychological war as much as it is anything else.
Psychological and information. Now, you remember that story you started with at the top about the Russians and how they're, blaming the Russians again. I think it was for hacking.
Yes.
And also the Russians allegedly were paying Taliban people to kill American soldiers. Mm-hmm. In that story, in that article, they were saying they started the story by saying how brilliant the Russians were at this fourth generation warfare. And when I heard that, and then I heard paying a bounty to kill American soldiers, I thought, that's just gangster. That's just street level gangster. Where's the brilliance?
Yeah.
Well, the brilliance is what got us over to Afghanistan and Iraq to begin with. And the brilliance is behind this full societal destabilization as they convert to these global systems of control, of command and control. And the massive lying to the public about everything that's going on. That's where the brilliance is. The brilliance is in whoever wrote this playbook.
Yeah, and I hate to give them compliments.
Well, there's brilliance brilliance is brilliance. It's whether you use it for evil or whether you use it for good. But this whole design of this conversion to a global system of governance, and if I were to bet on who was behind these designs, I would be looking at the International Institute for Applied Systems Analysis and for the national academies. Mm-hmm. I think they're called National Academy.
Yeah.
Those scientists.
Yeah.
Because they knew what they were designing for. If you know what you're designing for, which is a global conversion, then you can come up with these big, ridiculous ideas.
Yeah, exactly. Hey, Dan, did you have anything else?
They're floating these memes as trial balloons, and then they measure our feedback to see what they say. It makes sense from this New World Order perspective of controlling, with the scientists doing that, like you said, Vicky, because that's their goal. So it's as if they're putting us on the ventilator and then seeing how much pressure they have to give us by the feedback of how we react to these trial balloons about all these things we're trying. That's why I think it's always important to always be on the offensive against evil. That way we're not on the ventilator to begin with.
Yeah.
I agree with you.
Once you're on the ventilator, you're a goner usually.
Mm-hmm.
So in Satanism, there are 9 deadly sins. Like we have, 7 deadly sins, and the worst is pride. And in Satanism, this is according to Mark Passio, he said that stupidity is considered the worst one. So they want to be intellectually smart, but they have no emotions, and they despise emotions because it's humans, and psychopaths can ape or copy a person and act emotional even though they don't have any, and that's been proven by EEGs where the brain lines flatline for emotional words and content and pictures. So, they are planning all this stuff, and they use us as feedback, and, we're nice and we say, oh, yeah, well, we'll try a math, sure, if you need it or whatever. But Jesus said that, the devil is the father of lies, and that's how and why they do it. And Vicky, you mentioned before, we talked about efficiency and effectiveness. Nothing evil does is effective because they are always on the take, and it's a gravy train, and it's passing money and everything around, like our money around, like through a sieve, like water through a sieve. But everything they do is efficient, and that's where it's dangerous, because having efficiency controlling us is being an emergency all the time. And that's why they need to be efficient and control us, because they are they squander more money and opportunity than anything else. So they make up for the ineffectiveness by being efficient as possible, and we suffer because we're victims of their mechanical plan.
Mm-hmm.
But
if the ineffectiveness is planned, then it's effective from the point of view of the planners. I mean, you're right. They don't ever intend anything to be really effective, because the objective is always something different than what they're saying, whether it's money or control or whatever, or just disruption.
Yeah.
So it's a matter of perspective. You have to really know what their real purpose is in what they're doing. And that's something that they never say publicly.
Yeah, Dan, hey, thanks for the call. I got to move on because we're...
Hey, thank you all.
Yeah,
thank you.
Appreciate it. Take care. All right, I wanted to move on because we're kind of loaded for bear today, but good call. Good call, good information, as always. As we move along here, White House healthcare IT news, this is one that you found, Vicky. The White House to the hospitals they're telling the hospitals, the White House is, the administration, to bypass the CDC and report COVID-19 data directly to the Health and Human Services Agency. Now, we've been talking about the bogus numbers, and this is another development. And I know that you have a take on it, especially since evidently there's something with the Health and Human Services that leads us into a lot of what we're going to be talking about today. You want to elaborate on that?
Yeah, it seems that the Health and Human Services has a new system that they're going to be using, and the contractor on that system is Palantir, peter-thiel, which I thought was huge, absolutely huge.
Now, for those, just to give people a background here, for those people who don't remember what Palantir is all about, I think it's time to jump back in time, Vicky. I think we should go back all the way to April 14th, 2018, because we talked about this on the show. I gave a little background on the history of a company called Facebook, for one thing, and Palantir's ties to Facebook, because I think this is all relevant. It all ties in together. So let's go back to our own show, April 14th, 2018.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Welcome, Mr. Zuckerberg. Do you know who Palantir is?
Okay, first of all, let me set this up a little better. This was Mark Zuckerberg testifying before Congress about the Cambridge Analytica Scandal. You remember in 2018 that was a big deal because they were all upset that Trump got elected, and somehow Cambridge Analytica had paid money to Facebook, evidently, and got all this data which helped Trump get elected. And so we had to have congressional hearings about this. And so what you're hearing is Maria Cantwell asking Mark Zuckerberg, who, by the way, was not under oath. He was not under oath for this hearing. Very important. Why is it? And I heard one of the people say, well, it doesn't matter. Still a crime to lie to Congress. Then why swear anybody in? That's my question. But he was not under oath for this, wasn't sworn in, but she's asking him a question about whether he's heard of Palantir and whether they scraped any data from Facebook.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Welcome, Mr. Zuckerberg. Do you know who Palantir is?
I do.
Some people have referred to them as Stanford Analytica. Do you agree?
Senator, I have not heard that.
Okay. Do you think Palantir taught Cambridge Analytica, as press reports are saying, how to do these tactics?
Senator, I don't know.
Do you think that Palantir has ever scraped data from Facebook?
Senator, I'm not aware of that.
Do you think that during the 2016 campaign, as Cambridge Analytica was providing support to the Trump campaign under Project Alamo, were there any Facebook people involved in that sharing of technique and information?
Senator, we provided support to the Trump campaign similar to what we provide to any advertiser or campaign.
Okay, so now I want to go to April 14th, 2018. Here's where I should. I just think it was interesting that she brought up Palantir Technologies. This is a private.
I forgot about that. I'm glad you caught that.
This is a private American software and services company which specializes in big data analysis. Vicky, Zuckerberg was given the money to found Facebook by Peter-thiel. Peter-thiel is a Bilderberger who gave Zuckerberg the seed money to establish Facebook. This is very important because Palantir Technology was founded in 2004 by who? Peter-thiel.
Yeah.
So I think Zuckerberg knows a lot more about Palantir than he's letting on. You got the Defense Advanced Projects Research Agency, DARPA, back around 2003. They came out with a program called LifeLog. Well, let me just share with you from Wired magazine. The Pentagon is about to embark on a stunningly ambitious research project designed to gather every conceivable bit of information about a person's life, index all that information, and make it searchable. Again, the date of this article was May 20th, 2003. They say what national security experts and civil libertarians want to know is why would the Defense Department want to do such a thing? The embryonic LifeLog program would dump everything into an individual does into a giant database. Every email sent or received, every picture taken, every web page surfed, every phone call made, every TV show watched, every magazine read. All of this and more would combine with information gleaned from a variety of sources, a GPS transmitter to keep tabs on where that person went, audio-visual sensors to capture what he or she sees or says, and biomedical monitors to keep track of the individual's health. This gigantic amalgamation of personal information could then be used to trace the threads of an individual's life to see exactly how a relationship or events developed, according to a briefing from the Defense Advanced Project Research Agency, LifeLog's sponsor. Someone with access to the database could retrieve a specific thread of past transactions or recall an experience from a few seconds ago or from many years earlier by using a search engine interface. On the surface, the project seems like the latest in a long line of DARPA's blue sky research efforts, most of which never make it out of the lab, but DARPA is currently asking businesses and universities for research proposals to begin moving LifeLog forward. And some people, such as Stephen Aftergood, a defense analyst with the Federation of American Scientists, are worried. With his controversial Total Information Awareness Database project, DARPA already is planning to track all of an individual's transactional data like what we buy and who gets our email. While the parameters of the project have not yet been determined, Aftergood says he believes LifeLog could go far beyond TIA's scope, adding physical information like how we feel and media data, like what we read, to this transactional data. LifeLog has the potential to become something that like TIA cubed. Okay, and the article goes on from there. But think of total information awareness. Everything you do, every place you go, everything you read, every movie you watch, basically every thought you have goes into this database. Okay? Now, obviously, back then, privacy advocates were outraged. Okay? So, here's the punchline, Vicky. The following year, February 4th, 2004, Wired comes out with this. Pentagon kills LifeLog project. It says the Pentagon canceled its so-called LifeLog project, an ambitious effort to build a database tracking a person's entire existence. February 4th, 2004. This is the date of the article, Pentagon kills LifeLog project. Care to take a stab at when Facebook was founded?
2004?
February 5th, 2004.
I'll be damned. Okay. All right. You know what? I just looked at Palantir's website, and if you look, it has a video playing in the background, and in the background there are images of healthcare, a syringe, soldiers, a surgical table. So this is military plus healthcare. This is global health. That's what they're doing with Palantir. And on their About page, it says, why we are here. We believe in augmenting human intelligence, not replacing it.
Wow.
And I don't know if they are a nonprofit. I mean, that was my impression, that they're a nonprofit, but that makes sense. You know, they've got Facebook as the front company collecting the data. The data, of course, you know, can go anywhere, end up with Palantir, and Palantir can then use that data or sell it or distribute it or whatever. Mm-hmm. So once the data is collected, you can't control it.
And we are back in the present. So,
well, we
that's
have to
a little
make
background.
One stop back to September 2019, when I wrote that report about our vital statistics, mm-hmm. and how our state health departments have turned over our vital statistics records over to a company called LexisNexis, or it's actually QREL. And supposedly the idea was so that you could order your birth certificate online, or your death certificate, or your divorce records. But all of those vital statistics records are in the hands of a company over in Great Britain called QREL.
Yeah.
And QREL is connected to who? Palantir.
QREL. That sounds like Quirrell. They have a quarrel with us.
I have an article on my website called Birth to Total Information Awareness.
Yeah, and why is this company being empowered so much? I think, really, you know, we talked about in that clip how Palantir gave Mark Zuckerberg the seed money for Facebook, and right after, at the time that LifeLog was killed, Facebook was born. And this Mark Zuckerberg, who I've never really believed this story about him founding this at Harvard, you know, all of these things. I mean, this guy doesn't come across smart enough to invent anything.
No.
He doesn't sound like he's smart enough to keep his dorm clean. You know,
no, I think peter-thiel is the brain. He's the brain.
Yeah, so it looks to me like Mark Zuckerberg was a chosen figurehead. Probably came up through an intelligence agency, I would imagine. I can't prove that, but that's what a lot of times I think this kind of thing happens. They pick people they can control. Anyway, he was, I think, chosen for this position, and he was given the money to do it, and he's just basically a good puppet there, being pulled by the strings. The seed money came from peter-thiel, and peter-thiel founded Palantir, which was founded from seed money from the CIA, basically, In-Q-Tel. Uh-huh. So this whole thing is a creation, a construct, just like I believe Google was a construct. You got to be careful. Now, I'm not saying that people can't found big companies that go on to be big out of their garage or out of their basement or something like that. A lot of the Americans love these types of success stories. That this person founded a company, they worked really hard, and they got very successful, and it became a huge, big, giant multinational corporation based upon, hard work out of their basement or hard work out of their garage. So we're attracted to things like that.
Does not happen.
Well, I don't. It has happened historically. I suppose maybe it could happen today, although honestly, I think there's a lot of hurdles in the way for a company, for a regular ma and pa operation today getting to be big like that, because you have so many monopolistic and predatory big corporations that hold small enterprises back. So it's very hard to get steam. I suppose it could happen, but it doesn't happen very often.
They pull these people out of the universities or Silicon Valley, but really they are funded by government contracts. They don't do it on their own. They're given an idea. Okay, here's a system that we'd like to have. Do it for us.
Yeah.
Okay, so.
And Harvard.
And more and more it's looking like what Palantir and this company, the name of the company is actually RELX, and it is connected with LexisNexis. Okay, and now we've got the Facebook piece, we've got vital statistics, and now we have CDC statistics, which is the foot in the door or the camel's nose in the tent for medical records.
Mm-hmm.
For total information awareness.
The Verge has done a pretty good job at doing investigative reporting, I got to say. I don't know how they are on everything else. I haven't really paid enough attention to them, but I know that they've got an article, and I don't know, this is probably something you found. Peter-Thiel's controversial Palantir is helping build a coronavirus tracking tool for the Trump administration. The tool is called HHS Protect Now. They say Palantir, an analytics company co-founded by Trump ally Peter-Thiel. See, I didn't even know he was an ally. But I guess that makes a lot of sense.
That's a very disturbing thing, by the way.
Yes, very much.
Peter-Thiel is apparently, it's actually Jared Kushner, who is the connection, I believe.
Well, they're supporting the U.S. Department of Health and Human Services in building a tool to track the spread of the coronavirus, according to a new report from the Daily Beast. The tool, which is reportedly called HHS Protect Now, is already up and running as of April 10th, and it helps officials compile reports on the coronavirus's spread throughout the U.S. by collecting data from state and local governments, healthcare institutions, and colleges. It is unclear what exactly this data is, where it comes from, or how it's being used. It's also unclear if Palantir is the sole technology provider of the tool or if other partners are involved. Reports earlier this month first surfaced Palantir's involvement with the U.S. Centers for Disease Control and Prevention and the UK's National Health Service. You remember how we were talking earlier about they were having some flaky numbers? Well, isn't that interesting?
Amazing coincidence, isn't it?
Yeah. Regarding coronavirus tracking software and other assistance in combating the global pandemic. This would appear to be an extension of that work. Palantir has at least 2 active contracts with Health and Human Services, one signed in January and the other less than 2 weeks ago. So, anyway, the article goes on from there. But they say, the Daily Beast said, it pulls data from across the federal government, state and local governments, healthcare facilities, and colleges to help administration officials determine how to mitigate and prevent spread of the virus, according to a spokesperson for the department. They say here's a partial description of the kind of data we're talking about. They say HHS said it has 187 data sets integrated into the platform, which inputs that include hospital capacity and inventories, supply chain data from the government and industry, diagnostic and geographic testing data, demographic statistics, state policy actions, and coronavirus and flu-like emergency department data. The spokesperson also said HHS was relying on private sector partner contributions of data. So,
emergency department data. Keep that in mind.
Yeah. So this is
and something else that's important to know.
Okay.
Is that it doesn't matter what data you initially start out with. What they need to get is that data sharing agreement, because then they can just add data elements. So the big hurdle is getting that data sharing agreement.
Yeah,
so,
you were sending me something last night that indicated that the National Highway Transportation System Administration was now considered a health authority for the purposes of data sharing. So, in other words, your health data could be shared with...
And what are the emergency rooms, the emergency departments in hospitals? They are connected to the transportation system. See, so it all makes sense logically if you understand it as a project that has to be rolled out. They have the far away ultimate goal, and they have to implement it stage by stage, piece by piece. And some of the things that you would say, well, it's just statistics on COVID, but that doesn't matter, because once they get the data sharing agreement and they get the data flowing from the hospitals to HHS to Palantir, they can just add more data elements that they collect, and pretty soon they have your whole medical record.
Yeah, I want to talk a little bit more about Palantir, how creepy this company is, Vicky. Because, and I've mentioned this article before, but it bears repeating, and I haven't shared as much. I went through last night. It's a massive article, and I won't read it all, but I could, because it's so rich in information. It's about that. It's about how Palantir was operating, and it still is, I think, to this day, in New Orleans, and all of the stuff that they were doing down there, and not even the city council had any knowledge of it. They start off the article, and it's called "Palantir has secretly been using New Orleans to test its predictive policing technology." And this is relevant because today, right now, there is an effort to defund the police. This is what we're hearing all over the place from Black Lives Matter, this communist movement, these Antifa types. This is a communist movement masquerading as a civil rights movement. I've said it over and over again, and I'm going to keep hammering that point because it's true. It's very true, and in everything we find, we see that it becomes more and more pronounced as a truth. But this article, it's really frightening to think that this kind of stuff is going on, and I believe that this is the system that they want to replace our police departments with. This type of intelligence.
It absolutely is. I'm sure of it. It's a system. Predictive policing is a system, and that was the whole point of community policing.
So they talk about, in this article, they start off talking about how in May and June of 2013, the New Orleans murder rate was the 6th highest in the United States, and how they were trying to bust these gangs, the 3NG and the 110ers, and members of the gangs. Anyway, they had made this bust. Now, we pick it up in paragraph 3. According to Ronald Serpas, the department's chief at the time, one of the tools used by the New Orleans Police Department to identify members of the gangs like 3NG and the 39ers came from the Silicon Valley company Palantir. The company provided software to a secretive NOP, New Orleans Police Department program that traced people's ties to other gang members, outlined criminal histories, analyzed social media, and predicted the likelihood that individuals would commit violence or become a victim. As part of the discovery process in Lewis's trial, the government turned over more than 60,000 pages of documents detailing evidence gathered against him from confidential informants, ballistics, and other sources. But they made no mention of the New Orleans Police Department's partnership with Palantir, according to a source familiar with the 39ers trial. The program began in 2012 as a partnership between New Orleans Police Department and Palantir Technologies, a data mining firm founded with seed money from the CIA's venture capital firm. According to interviews and documents obtained by The Verge, the initiative was essentially a predictive policing program similar to the heat list in Chicago that purports to predict which people are likely drivers or victims of violence. And we can see what a great job this program did for Chicago. Now, Chicago, incidentally, as a side note, didn't adopt Palantir's program. They rolled their own. But still, if predictive predictive policing works so well, why is Chicago such a danger zone? That's my question. Anyway, they say the partnership has been extended 3 times, the New Orleans partnership with Palantir they're talking about, with the 3rd extension scheduled to expire on February 21st, 2018. The city of New Orleans and Palantir have not responded to questions about the program's current status. Predictive policing technology has proven highly controversial where it is implemented, but in New Orleans, the program escaped public notice partly because Palantir established it as a philanthropic relationship with the city through Mayor Mitch Landrell's signature NOLA for Life program. Thanks to its philanthropic status, as well as the New Orleans strong mayor model of government, the agreement never passed through a public procurement process. In fact, the key council members and city and attorneys contacted by The Verge had no idea that the city had any sort of relationship with Palantir, nor were they aware that Palantir used its program in New Orleans to market its services to another law enforcement agency for a multi-million-dollar contract. Even James Carville, the political operative instrumental in bringing about Palantir's collaboration with the New Orleans Police Department, said that the program was not public knowledge. He said, "No one in New Orleans even knows about this, to my knowledge." More than a half a decade after the partnership with New Orleans began, Palantir has patented at least one crime forecasting system and has sold similar software to foreign intelligence services for predicting the likelihood of individuals to commit terrorism. Even within the law enforcement community, there are concerns about the potential civil liberties implications of the sort of individualized prediction Palantir developed in New Orleans and whether it's appropriate for the American criminal justice system. Quote, "They're creating a target list, but we're not going after al-Qaeda in Syria," unquote, said a former law enforcement official who has observed Palantir's work firsthand, as well as the company's sales pitches for predictive policing. The former official spoke in condition of anonymity to freely discuss their concerns with data mining and predictive policing. They continued, "Palantir is a great example of an absolutely ridiculous amount of money spent on a tech tool that may have some application. However, it's not the right tool for local and state law enforcement." Now, they go on and they talk about how Palantir was co-founded in 2004 by Alexander Karp and peter-thiel. Peter-thiel is the company's single largest shareholder. Palantir's rapid ascent to become one of the highest valued private Silicon Valley companies has been driven by lucrative contracts with the Pentagon and the United States intelligence services, as well as foreign security services. In recent years, Palantir has sought to expand its data fusion and analysis business to the private sector with mixed success. Prediction is not new territory for Palantir since at least 2009. The company was used by the Pentagon to predict the location of improvised explosive devices in Afghanistan and Iraq, a wartime risk assessment program absent the civil liberties concerns that come with individualized predictive policing. Its commercial software platform, Metropolis, seems like we've heard of that before. Yes. Also reportedly uses predictive analytics to help businesses develop consumer markets and streamline investments. But before 2012, with the New Orleans program, there is no publicly available record that Palantir had ventured into predictive policing. Interest and investment in predictive policing technology accelerated after 2009, when the National Institute of Justice began issuing grants for pilot projects in crime forecasting. Those grants underpin some of the best-known and most scrutinized predictive policing efforts in Chicago and Los Angeles. Programs vary, and the algorithms are often proprietary, but they all aim to ingest vast stores of data, geography, criminal records, and weather, social media histories, and make predictions about individuals or places likely to be involved in a crime. In the following years, many startup firms have struggled to monetize the crime-fighting method, most notably PredPol, a California startup whose contract awards have foundered after an initial blitz of publicity in the early 2010s. I mean, I could go on and on and on here because the article does, and it's an excellent article. I encourage people to read the whole thing. They talk about inaccuracies in predictions and bias against the people of color, which it's going to be a problem because those areas tend to be the ones where a lot of crime are. But they talk about
there are so many logic flaws in the idea of predictive policing, because you tag somebody as being a criminal before they really are.
Yeah.
So, and that sets up everybody for the I forget what they call it, but where they set up evidence against you so that they can arrest you. So that's what they did to Roger Stone and what's that young Papadopoulos?
Mm-hmm.
And but now I forgot what I was going to say. But predictive policing really it's easy to slip into being a tool for politics, a political tool, because you know everything about their life in order to do predictions. Oh, I was going to say, they didn't, in that article they said they didn't know that Palantir had slipped into predictive policing. But if you think about it, the whole counterterrorism business, information systems for counterterrorism, that's integral into the idea of preventing terrorism.
Mm-hmm.
So it's just the only difference is in the definition of what is ordinary criminal activity and what is terrorism. But it's the same thing. You have to have the same data for both.
Yeah, this is all Minority Report stuff, pre-crime type of activity here that's being implemented in real life. I mean, the science fiction of yesterday, which was featured in movies, has now come to the fore in reality today. It's alarming.
Yeah. And you know what? In about 2003, I remember when I did some research and on total information awareness when I first found out about it, and the Congress did try to put a stop to it. But what they did, and I forget which agency of government it was because this was a long time ago that I wrote it. I can find the article, though. I know which one it is. What the agency that was building it did was just to break it up and distribute out pieces of it everywhere, just farm it out. So they're building the same system, but technically they are following Congress's instructions to stop, but in reality they never stopped. They just broke it up and farmed it out.
One of the things he mentioned in this article is how it started in New Orleans. They say, according to interviews and documents obtained by The Verge, Palantir first approached New Orleans in 2012 through a well-known intermediary, James Carville, the Democratic power broker and architect of Bill Clinton's successful 1992 presidential campaign. Carville is a paid advisor of Palantir, whose involvement with the data mining company dates back to at least 2011.
Oh, man.
In an interview.
That is huge. A paid advisor.
Yeah, and he conveniently leaves that out. He did an interview. They say in an interview with The Verge, Carville said that he was the impetus for the collaboration between Palantir and New Orleans. Quote, "I am the sole driver of that project. It was entirely my idea," he said, adding that he and Palantir CEO Alex Karp flew down to New Orleans to meet with Mayor Landrieu. "To me," he says, "it was a case of morality." Young people were shooting each other, and the public wasn't as involved as they should have been. The documents outlining Palantir's relationship with New Orleans describe the company's role as a pro bono and philanthropic relationship. In other words, evidently they were working for free, just to test out the program. In 2015, Palantir mentioned its work in New Orleans in its annual philanthropic report, characterizing the effort as a collaborative network analysis for law enforcement and other city stakeholders. Apparently the CUP, John Q. Citizen, isn't a stakeholder, however, so nobody knew that they had profiles being built upon them. Anyway,
yeah, everybody in the world is a stakeholder except the target of the people, individual.
By the people, for the people, except the people don't factor in. Carville's remarks on a Bay Area public radio station, which, by the way, I had to suffer through this interview in order to get this clip. I got the audio from that interview, the relevant stuff. The most of it's crap, but this was a good little tidbit. He made remarks on a Bay Area radio station 4 years ago. Well, that as of the date of this article. This article was put out a number of years ago. But he elucidated how Palantir's relationship with the city came about in a January 2014 appearance on KQED's Forum talk show. Carville and his wife, Mary Madeline, touted Palantir's work in the New Orleans area as a major driver in the city's 2-year decline in the murder rate. So this is the interview. Mary Madeline brought it up first, Palantir, and she's all glowing. She's all abuzz about it. So they talked about it.
One of the ways we've been able to get our arms around crime in New Orleans, this is important, we want everybody to understand this, is through the efforts of Palantir, which is a California-based company that is helping us with preventive policing. They've been saints, absolute saints, so thank you.
Where are they located in California?
In Palo Alto. I did the CEO of a company called Palantir, which is a Palo Alto high-tech big data company, and the CEO, a guy named Alex Karp, said that they wanted to do some pro bono, some charitable work. And what did I think? And I said, we have a really horrific crime rate in New Orleans. And so he came down and met with our mayor. And Alex grew up in in Manhattan or somewhere in metropolitan New York, Jewish, kind of secular guy. And our mayor was like Jesuit educated guy. And they both, it was really amazing, both had the same reaction, and that is the utter immorality of young people killing other young people in society, not doing anything about it. And we were able to, at no cost to the city, start integrating data and being able to predict and intervene as to where these conflicts were going to be arising. And we've seen probably a third reduction in our murder rate since this project started. But this is a good example of how when people sort of work together and sort of come at something, because, and it sounds horrible, but a lot of society's attitude is, well, these kids are just they're shooting each other. As long as they're not coming to Pacific Heights, what the hell, it's not really my problem. And the idea that you would have a really uber high-tech company in Silicon Valley and a mayor look at a problem and have the same perspective of how immoral it is, and to be able to meet with the success that we have. Now, we still unacceptably high. We still have a lot of work to do, but we're getting much, much better as we progress into this.
And we cannot thank Palantir enough for volunteering.
I wonder if Palantir is doing any work here locally. East Oakland could use some of this, too.
They do a lot of stuff in LA.
Well, we're kind of a prototype, and we're going to try down. They do all.
Okay, now listen to what she says here. This is very important, what Mary Madeline is about to say.
We're kind of a prototype, and we're going to try down. They do all kinds of stuff, but we've been to. I brought that up not just to thank Alex and Palantir, but to let people know when you're going to New Orleans, we have identified the circle of the problem and have reduced it. And unless you're a cousin of some drug dealer that went bad, you're going to be okay.
Yeah, but again, like any other big city, I would be aware where I am.
Unless you're the cousin of some big drug dealer, you're going to be okay. But what happens if you are the cousin of some drug dealer that went bad?
Yeah, you know what? They're making it seem like this is philanthropy. No, it's not philanthropy. They used that city, to develop the system that they intend to sell everywhere else.
What they're doing is they're building databases on the people. That's what they're doing. They're scraping social media accounts. They're scraping all the data that they can get on you. And they're building profiles, even police stops. If a police stop you, then that police officer is gathering intel on who you are. And you remember the controversy in New York about the stop and frisk program. what a big deal it was because they said it was unfairly targeting blacks in New York. But what that was is a data gathering operation. Because these plans operate in New York. They gather intel on certain people, and they, it all goes into the database.
Right. So our country has become just a big, I want to say spy country, but there are spies everywhere collecting data on you, every bit of data that they can get, whether it's your bank account, your credit cards, your medical record, your school records, your work history, your social media posts, who your friends are, who your relatives are, everything about you.
Big Brother wants to know it all.
Yeah.
And
so they can predict what you're going to do.
And Palantir is the sniffing nose of Big Brother. The big, long, giant snout that's going to be up your hind end every step, every day of your life, every day of your existence. We got the end of the hour. We got to take the top of the hour break. We'll continue here in hour number 3 straight ahead.
Before us the opportunity to forge for ourselves and for future generations a new world order.
New world order.
New world order.
This is a moment to seize. The kaleidoscope has been shaken. The pieces are in flux. Soon they will settle again. Before they do, let us reorder this world around us.
A new world order. A world where the United Nations is poised to fulfill the historic vision of its founders.
Nevertheless, the United States is in a key position to shape this so that the problem of the Bush presidency will be the emergence of a new international order.
The first decade of the 21st century, that out of what will be seen as the greatest restructuring of the global economy, a new world order was created.
Documenting the crisis of our republic.
The very word secrecy is repugnant in a free and open society. And we are, as a people, inherently and historically opposed to secret societies, to secret oaths, and to secret proceedings.
Waging war on the New World Order.
In the councils of government, we must guard against the acquisition of unwarranted influence, whether sought or unsought, by the military-industrial complex.
This is Govern America with Darren Weeks and Vicky Davis.
Live from FEMA Regions 5 and 10, this is the third and final hour of Govern America with Darren Weeks and Vicky Davis. We're here every Saturday. We hope you'll tell folks about the broadcast if you appreciate what you hear here. It continues to be the 18th of July, 2020, as we get right back into it, talking about Palantir, total information awareness, ladies and gentlemen, homeland security, fusion centers, the entire police state with its predictive policing model that's being implemented in major cities across the United States, but certainly this is a worldwide thing as well. So if you're listening overseas, don't think you're immune to this, because I'm sure it's going to be coming to a place near you. Because this is a global model, as we've often pointed out on the show. All these systems that are implemented are global systems. It's all interconnectedness, and this is what this technocratic new world order is all about. It's about creating this control.
And I would say to those people overseas in other countries, do a search on intelligent transportation systems, and if you can find where your country is implementing intelligent transportation systems, then everything that we're saying here applies to you, except that your country might be ahead of us or might be behind us. But we're all on the same track.
We're all in the same sinking quicksand.
Yes.
It's horrifying. But, it looks to me like a lot of this stuff, this predictive policing stuff, is based upon, I'll tell you what it reminds me of, is the China social credit scoring system, Vicky.
Well, they'll be implementing that. We know they will.
Yeah,
we know they
in fact, we're seeing signs of it already. Yeah, China's ahead of us on that because they have to tiptoe around the Constitution in the United States. So they did mention in this article about the LexisNexis connection. They say in January 2013, New Orleans would also allow Palantir to use its law enforcement account for LexisNexis's Accurant product, which is comprised of millions of searchable public records, court filings, licenses, addresses, phone numbers, and social media data. The firm also got free access to city criminal and non-criminal data in order to train its software for crime forecasting. Neither the residents of New Orleans nor city council members, whose job it is to oversee the use of municipal data, were aware of Palantir's access to reams of their data. My question is, how in the world is this legal?
Well, I think if people understood, if our members of Congress actually had some real systems people to explain all of this to them, they would have to say this is not legal. I mean, every bit of information that they are collectivizing and centralizing is negating our individual autonomy and our right to privacy and our right to travel freely and to live our lives without interference. Even those systems where they're collecting the data, they're even collecting data on what goes on in your home. The smart meters. Every time you flip on a light switch in the middle of the night, it generates a blip, in the smart meter data. And they know, this person got up and went to the bathroom.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So I mean, it is absolutely all-inclusive intrusion into everybody's lives on a mass scale.
Yeah, absolutely. The several pages down, they say Palantir's prediction model in New Orleans used an intelligence technique called social networks analysis, or SNA, to draw connections between people, places, cars, weapons, addresses, social media posts, and other indicia in previously siloed databases. After entering a query term like a partial license plate, nickname, address, phone number, or social media handle or post, New Orleans Police Department's analyst would review the information scraped by Palantir's software and determine which individuals are at the greatest risk of either committing violence or becoming a victim, based on their connections to known victims or assailants. The data on individuals came from information scraped from social media as well as New Orleans Police Department criminal databases for ballistics, gangs, probation or parole information, jailhouse phone calls, calls for service, the central case management system, in other words, every case New Orleans Police Department had on record, and the department's repository of field interview cards. The latter database represents every documented encounter the police department has with citizens, even those that don't result in arrests. In 2010, the Times Picayune revealed that Chief Serpas had mandated that the collection of field interview cards be used as a measure of officer and district performance, resulting in over 70,000 field interview cards filled out in 2011 and 2012. The practice resembled NYPD's stop and frisk program, which I mentioned earlier, and was instituted with the express purpose of gathering as much intelligence on New Orleans as possible, regardless of whether or not they committed a crime. A partial license plate, a nickname, an address, a phone number, a social media handle. The department then used the list of potential victims and perpetrators of violence generated by Palantir to target individuals for the city's ceasefire program. Ceasefire. Now, here's where your social workers come into the view, Vicky. Ceasefire is a form of decades-old carrot-and-stick strategy developed by David Kennedy, a professor at John Jay College in New York. In the program, law enforcement informs potential offenders with criminal records that they know their past actions and will prosecute them to the fullest extent if they reoffend. If the subjects choose to cooperate, they are, quote-unquote, called in to a required meeting as part of their conditions of probation and parole, and are offered
and they have to pay for it, by the way.
And are offered job training, education, potential job placement, and health services. In New Orleans, the ceasefire program is run under the broader umbrella of NOLA for Life, which is Mayor Landrieu's pet project that he has funded through millions of dollars from private donors. Private donors. According to Surplus, the person who initially ran New Orleans' social network analysis from 2013 to 2015 was Jeff Asher, a former intelligence agent. He's a former intelligence agent who joined the department from the CIA. If someone had been shot, Surplus explained, Asher would use Palantir's software to find people associated with them through field interviews or social media data. So
that's huge.
Yeah,
that is just
isn't it?
Huge.
So, we're not whack job conspiracy theorists when we say these social media outfits are sucking up information from you and sending it straight to the Department of Homeland Security through the fusion centers. We've been saying this, and I think people think we're tinfoil hat wearers for doing it.
But it's your own police department too, and pretty soon it's going to be your own hospital. It's going to be your own schools, all sending information in to this centralized. Sending information in, and that information will be mined by software like Palantir's.
Mm-hmm.
So you become an object. You just become an object. You're no longer a citizen. You don't count. You are just an object to be. It's like being under a microscope.
Yeah, there's a lot of verbiage given to whether the program was successful at all. They seem to have some drop early on in, because they were arresting more people, but then it was dropping off. The effect was quickly dropped off, and the social programs didn't work predictably. I mean, come on, these people wouldn't be criminals if they were interested in education. They wouldn't be, if they wanted to have a productive life, they could choose to have a productive life. It's easier for them to commit crimes, to victimize people. That's what they choose to do. So
the training programs that they send you to at the local community college, they train, young guys for landscaping or for air conditioning systems, heat and air conditioning systems, or, they've got a list of about, half a dozen things that they train people for in vocations.
Mm-hmm.
But how many of those do you really need in an area? And the community colleges are pumping these people out every semester. So, it's one of those systems that exists that you can point to on paper and say, oh, look what we're doing. But in the real world, it's totally ineffective.
Yeah,
for helping people. Like
I said, I could have easily gone through and read this whole article on the air, but it would take a huge chunk of our broadcast. So I've read a lot of it already, and I apologize for reading so much. But I just think it's very, very important to see what is going on in New Orleans and other cities as well. As a matter of fact, in here they mention that its technology has been adopted. They've actually sold it to Israel. Here's the paragraph. They say, last year, the Israeli newspaper Haaretz reported that Israel's security services used analytic systems that scraped social media and other data to predict potential lone wolf attackers from Palestinian communities in the West Bank, and that Palantir was one of only 2 technology companies to provide predictive intelligence systems to Israeli security organizations. So this is being used in war zones. This is the same type of technology that they're using. And as I recall, I seem to remember somewhere that Palantir was also involved in monitoring North Korea's nuclear program. So this octopus has its tentacles all over the world, and including in your own backyard.
Yeah. Well, and okay, now let's go back to the latest information. They want Palantir is going to be getting the COVID information.
Health and Human Services is working with Palantir.
Right. Okay, and that includes your hospital emergency rooms, right?
Mm-hmm. It would.
And something that a friend just sent to me is that the I forget what agency it is, FEMA or DHS is having a project to standardize the reporting from emergencies, from emergency calls, 911. That would be police, fire, and medical, right? Mm-hmm. Because they are building a national database of emergency information, usage of the emergency information. And so when you think about, well, why do they need the 911 calls nationalized? Why do they need police calls nationalized? And why do they need fire calls nationalized? Well, Palantir, it's information for Palantir.
Part of the total information awareness system. Yeah, you got into this latest, this 911. They call it the next generation 911 or NG 911. And you got into this through a story, right, involving a police officer that got shot. Wasn't that what your foray into it, or was that just something that happened that accelerated your research into it?
Well, you have to kind of go through my stream of consciousness, which is what I was documenting when I wrote about in Caldwell or Boise, I guess it was. No, Star, Idaho. There was a deputy sheriff that was
I got
shot.
the story. You want me to give the backgrounder here?
Yeah, would you?
Okay, Good. Here it is. Here's the story she's talking about.
This is new at 6. Police have identified the suspect in this morning's officer-involved shooting that happened in Star we've been covering all day. 21-year-old Matthew Kelly of Emmett faces a number of felony charges, including aggravated battery, burglary, eluding arrest. He's expected to appear in court tomorrow afternoon. So let's go right to Chase Biefeld. He joins us at the scene of the chaotic event that broke out this morning. He's going to break it down for us. Chase?
Yeah, Mark, that shooting happened right here on River Birch Golf Course. This is just right off the corner of Highway 16 and Beacon Light Road. Now, this all started at about 7:30 this morning when Kelly was suspected of trying to steal a motorcycle in Canyon County. That led to this field where he reportedly got off the bike and shot the deputy twice. Multiple officers and a SWAT team searched for the suspect in a cornfield. He eventually surrendered around 11 today and is now in police custody. The sheriff's deputy was taken to St. Al's in Boise for surgery and is in stable condition, we heard. Officers also found the suspect's father, Kevin Kelly, riding a motorcycle in the area. That's how they were able to call and negotiate with the suspect. The sheriff's office also took Kevin Kelly into custody on burglary charges not linked to this case. And Mark, both Kellys will appear in court tomorrow afternoon on these charges.
All right, Chase Biefeld reporting for us. Chase, thank you.
Okay, so go ahead and with your analysis.
Okay. After I listened to that and I put together the story, and
by the way, I do have the press conference there where he's talking about the 5 agencies.
Just 5 agencies.
Whenever you want to play that.
Working together. Okay, so what I did is I went through a number of articles because you get different information. Mm-hmm. And it serves to know that this kid had gotten in trouble a couple of weeks before for a burglary. So he was already in trouble. But on this particular day, he lives in a town called Emmett, which is over the hill from where he was arrested, miles away. He did the burglary in a different county. And, okay, for this burglary, here is how he was dressed. Okay, so I wrote, what we have is a guy who is in a different county who stole a yellow motorcycle. He was wearing a beige backpack and a blue bandana, presumably on his head. The motorcycle malfunctions just at the point that the sheriff's deputy, who works for the Eagle Police Department, is right behind him. The suspect jumps off the motorcycle, fires at the police car, and then takes off running into a cornfield. Now, it's probably just me, but that whole scenario seems very unlikely. If you're going to go steal a yellow motorcycle, are you going to carry a beige backpack and have a blue bandana on? Those things kind of seem like a flag saying, hey, I'm the actor in this little multi-jurisdictional play that we're playing. Okay, now he did shoot at the police car, and I think it accidentally hit the deputy sheriff, and so he was hurt. And first reports that came out made it seem like, it's a near fatal attack. He's in critical condition. Well, that was not true, and it was never true. It sounded like he had, relatively non-threatening injuries.
Did the cop recover? Do you know?
Oh yeah, I'm sure.
Is he still?
Yeah, I heard other reports.
Okay.
Okay, but now the significance of that for me is the multi-jurisdictional police action. What the PR person who works for the sheriff department, when he gave the report, he said they called out their crisis incident team, which are people from 5 different jurisdictions.
Okay.
Okay, so what that tells me is that they were treating this as if, the guy was a bank robber, but they also are working on an emergency system where they can call out multi-jurisdictionally.
You want me to play that press briefing?
Sure.
Okay.
This morning, Ada County Sheriff's Office got involved in a call for service as a result of a call in Canyon County where they had a home burglary and a motorcycle was stolen from a residence off of Highway 2026 in Canyon County. Our North County Star Eagle units were then dispatched to this stolen vehicle where one of our patrol units saw the motorcycle. They attempted to stop the vehicle. A short pursuit ensued. From there, the suspect got off of the motorcycle, exchanged gunfire with our deputy. Our deputy was struck twice. We would ask you to avoid Highway 16 and Beacon Light area. We have an active manhunt going on. We have activated our critical incident task force, and right now the Boise Police Department is the lead investigator. Many of the questions that come up surrounding this typically are who is the lead investigator or agency, who's involved. We have 5 agencies in the Treasure Valley that make up our critical incident task force. Boise Police Department, Garden City, Meridian, Idaho State Police, and the Ada County Sheriff's Office. All 5 agencies are on scene and working this investigation as a joint investigation right now, but the Boise Police Department is the lead agency as of right now.
So we have regional cooperation.
Yes. A regional 911 system as well. There is a fusion center in Meridian, Idaho, and the whole reason I was paying attention to multiple jurisdictional things was because of the research that I did on the Trojan Triangle. Okay, so that's where I first
now for new listeners, if you could just Vicky, can you for new listeners briefly explain what Trojan Triangles are? Because somebody might not know what you're talking about.
Okay, well, a Trojan Triangle is a name that I gave to an area that has been defined in law that serves a particular purpose that is outside of your normal jurisdiction. It's not a city, it's not a town, it's not a county. It is its own jurisdiction.
It's kind of an international zone of cooperation, right?
Right, and my ultimate conclusion was that it was a port district, an inland port district in Idaho. But I had to give a name to it because it is built over a period of time, piece by piece by piece. And so it is a construct that is built over a period of time and ultimately turns out to be a thing that you can identify, which is either you want to call it a charter city, a special economic zone, a intermodal commerce zone, or what I called it, which was a Trojan Triangle, because I didn't know what it was.
But they bring together the education, the transportation, what's the other side of the triangle?
Education, transportation, economic development.
Okay.
It's kind of like a city-state, like a Roman city-state, which also turns out to be the same construct that the people in Silicon Valley see, the end of nation-states and the rise of the city-state.
Yeah. I didn't mean to get you off track of the 911 stuff. I just wanted to make sure people understand. So. Well,
no, that's okay, because it's one of the elements of that Trojan Triangle system is the fusion center. And the fusion center becomes a technological data hub, not just for collection, but also for data sharing. Okay, now this emergency 911 system, the sheriff there mentioned their Code Red system, which is a notification system when something goes wrong. You can sign up for it, and if anything is happening in your area, if you're signed up for this Code Red system, they will notify you to shelter in place or whatever. But so the whole idea of a regional center that turns out to be a fusion center is predicated upon these cross-jurisdictional agreements for your law enforcement and emergency services. Okay, because they are it's the emergency services sector of your town. Okay. Now it turns out that the FCC in 2016 came up with a plan for the final design for a nationalized 911 system.
This is very important. What she's going to be talking about here, this document is just outrageous, absolutely outrageous.
And it's
took notes.
Official stuff, actually.
And
you want to tell them about it, because I think you read it.
Well, the only thing I did was print out your email to me, and where you took the notes. Page 61 and 62 of this report, which we'll have in the show notes. I actually downloaded the PDF file and uploaded it to our website at governamerica.com. So I'll have the actual link there. The document will be there in case they take it down. But pages 61 and 62 of the report shows this very sophisticated, these charts about how this whole program, how this very sophisticated system will work. Now, I don't know what the PSAP architecture is.
That's your local 911 center, call dispatch center.
But do you know what the acronym actually stands for? I didn't see that readily available. But anyway,
I can find it really quick. It's point of something or other.
Okay, well that's fine. That's fine. I was just wondering about that. But this is what they're doing, is they're talking about the PSAP architecture. How the local 911 is going to be laid out with the intrusion detection systems and everything. Now, one of the pages in this report also has the graphic, which traces all of this stuff back from the local and the regional all the way up to the national. So it shows exactly how all of your local 911 system is being connected to the national level. And
Yes.
Page 89, they talk about social media mining, which sounds awful familiar. It's a lot what we've been talking about, isn't it?
It's exactly what we just have been talking about and it's an analyst position.
Yeah, pages 91 and 94, social media analysts. Under advanced services, they say social media intel. These are things that it's good for. They say it's good for. Additional benefits. Social media intel. IoT, which is the Internet of Things, ladies and gentlemen. All these smart devices in your house, your smart meter, your smart refrigerator, your smart light bulbs, your smart everything. Yeah, all of this stuff is really going to smart in the future, as in hurt. Video surveillance, etc. All of this stuff is included in this next generation 911 architecture. And the graphic I was just talking about it all connecting 911 calls enter a cloud. This is on page 106 of the document, which we'll, again, have in the show notes. 911 call centers, the call will enter the cloud containing the network of regional, state, and federal level 911 systems. You also have in here page 126, National Emergency Medical Services Information Systems. NEMSIS is what it's called, Vicky. NEMSIS is the acronym for the National Emergency Medical Services Information System. Now, I thought it was very interesting that they use that as an acronym.
Yeah, I did too.
Because that sounds to me...
It did not escape me.
Yeah, because that sounds, and I'm sure it's probably for the same reason, it sounds an awful lot like Nemesis. Does it not?
Yes, it does.
And if you go to the dictionary, nemesis is something that a person cannot conquer, achieve, etc. An opponent or rival whom a person cannot best or overcome. Definition number 3, a goddess of divine retribution. Definition number 4, an agent or act of retribution or punishment. I don't think they choose these things by accident. We know they put a lot of thought into the names of these programs, and the only thing they left out here was the E in the middle. National Emergency Medical Services Information Center, or NEMSIS, could provide a model for a similar data system for 911. The NEMSIS is a national effort to standardize the data collected by EMS agencies, funded by a line item in the budget of the Office of Emergency Medical Services at the U.S. Department of Transportation. A uniform pre-hospital EMS data set was established. A national data dictionary was created with, memorandums of understanding were signed by all 56 states and territories. And a technical assistance center was established to support state implementation and certify the compliance levels of software vendors. The EMS stakeholders and software vendors were all included in this process. So,
okay.
Go ahead.
Now, when the reason why I started doing the research to begin with on what was happening in Star, Idaho that led me to the Trojan Triangle was because of an agreement signed by the mayors, by 5 mayors plus a few county officials, agreeing to set up an institute and a 501c3 partnership. And they got a $500,000 grant to spend, and this was all part of setting up a different system for transportation and land use planning. And one of the first things that they did in that was to get the law enforcement jurisdictions that wanted to participate to sign memorandums of understanding for cooperation. So now you've got the mayors in a private partnership. You've got law enforcement in a private partnership. Essentially, what they are doing is they are co-opting our elected representative government and creating a layer above by partnership agreement. So they are, in effect, changing our form of government.
Yes.
And by these agreements.
The last thing we want are private entities, private police, private companies having access to our private data and being able to use these things, even though they have, in fact, I got the contract between New Orleans, the New Orleans city of New Orleans, and the Palantir company. In fact, I'll put that in the show notes as well. And then the contract, they make, give lip service to, the data can't be shared except in certain cases, certain instances, blah, blah, blah. But how do we know that any of this is abided by? And Palantir shouldn't have access to it either. There are some things we don't want the government to know about us. But, people are freely giving up information about themselves every day. I guess it just really floors me just how people just don't think. They don't seem to have any kind of common sense about these types of things. Privacy doesn't seem to be valued as much as it used to be.
Yeah, you kind of have to have a clue that there's something really dirty and rotten going on. Otherwise, you're looking at the world, especially young people, they have this Pollyanna view of the world. It's all new. I mean, they're young. What do they know? Mm-hmm. Because what is being done at the governmental level is they have set up our city leaders and county leaders to act as a syndicate. This is the syndicalization of our government. Mm-hmm. So they've got the law enforcement and emergency services syndicate. They have the our mayors and some county officials functioning as a syndicate. And we have the federal government funding different things for these entities to do. And if they do these things, then the federal government will give them money.
Yeah.
Now, how is the federal government setting up these programs? There are systems designers in the background that are designing integrated systems, all designed to function together for total information awareness.
Yep. And
if you doubt for 1 second that people can design things like this, consider how I have deconstructed it. If I can deconstruct it, I sure as hell can design it.
Yeah.
If I know what you want.
Absolutely. Absolutely. You're kind of reverse engineering the system by examining its components.
Which is harder than designing something from scratch.
Yeah, and they've been obviously working on this for a long time. You've got a website called 911.gov, which is evidently the website for the 911. And they got a page called 911 Data Path. A nationally uniform 911 data system can provide 911 and community leaders with essential information to assist with strategic planning, governance decisions, and operational improvements at all levels of the nation's 911 systems. While 911 data is regularly collected, challenges exist in comparing non-standardized data across states. What does a nationally uniform 911 data system look like? Well, first of all, why do we want a uniform 911 data system? Let's start there. They have to harmonize it, ladies and gentlemen, to consolidate it at the top. That's the whole point. They say the 911 Data Path Strategic Plan describes the characteristics of an ideal future environment where data can be exchanged on a scheduled ad hoc or near real-time basis and has 5 strategic goals. Number 1, data uniformity. Number 2, automated data handling. Number 3, role-based information sharing. Number 4, sustainable vital support mechanisms. And number 5, data-savvy 911 professionals. So they go on from there. Go ahead.
So when you have the Palantir system, they can make a request for all data about you. And if you called 911 at some point to complain that the neighbor's dog is out wandering loose and it's a pit bull, they will scoop up that information and they will know that about you. You know, it's all part of the data. There really is no reason to collectivize that kind of data.
Yeah, there's another site called FirstNet.gov. FirstNet, they say, is an independent authority within the U.S. Department of Commerce, authorized by Congress in 2012. Its mission is to develop, build, and operate the nationwide broadband network that equips first responders to save lives and protect U.S. communities. Now, back to the 911.gov, they have a page called 911 and FirstNet. And they say 2 important upgrades are underway to improve emergency communication. Next Generation 911, or NG 911, and the development of a public safety broadband network by the First Responder Network Authority, FirstNet. These 2 systems, though being built separately, are envisioned to work together to develop access to public safety that today's consumers expect. Oh, man, they don't expect to have all this information gathered on them. The nation's 911 systems have not kept up, they say, with today's digital technological advances. Most public safety answering points are... Okay, there it is. There's the public safety answering points. That's the answer to my question earlier. What are PSAPs? They're called public safety answering points.
Yeah, it's the command and control for 911.
Most PSAPs still use legacy 911 copper landline technology that is increasingly difficult and costly to maintain. First responder communication is largely based on land mobile radio technology, and as of now, data from the public cannot seamlessly move across the public safety communications infrastructure from the public to the PSAP to the first responders. Emergency communications experts agree that 911 systems must transition to NG 911, a digital system that accepts both traditional landline emergency calls and database notifications such as video and images. FirstNet will transition first responder communication from a voice-only system to a broadband LTE wireless network.
And if we have one of those electromagnetic bombs go off in the atmosphere,
well, then we're all toast.
We're just totally done.
Yeah, well, I keep hearing rumors that the grid's going down. I really hope that doesn't happen. But whenever I hear that,
I do too. But with everything that they're doing, and it is so evil from my point of view, what they are doing with these systems and information collection, I'm really torn.
Yeah, whenever I hear that, though, I think, with all the stuff we got to worry about now, I don't need crises that might happen or could happen in the future. I've got enough on my plate now to deal with.
Well, that's how they justify all of this, though. And, okay, another component of this and COVID and how this all ties together is that when Obamacare was passed, they set up medical records data exchanges, okay? Mm-hmm. And the way that it was marketed here in Idaho is that, what if you're being taken to the hospital and you're allergic to penicillin? The guys in the ambulance, they won't know that. They might give you an emergency shot of penicillin or something. And so we need to have access to, we need to have electronic medical records, and we need to have the ambulance drivers, ambulance people have access to those records. Well, you can see how incrementally, step by step, there is supposedly some requirement for something that we absolutely cannot live without, must have it, even though man has gone on for a couple thousand years, and we didn't have that, but now we have to have it. And the electronic medical records was one of those things. Okay, so in the Idaho, it's called the Idaho Electronic Data Exchange. Well, the COVID task force that is working for the governor just happens also to be on the board of directors of the Health Records Exchange. Isn't that a coincidence?
Yeah, isn't that amazing? Wow.
And it's those records that they needed for emergencies that are linked up to the 911 system. You know, so that the ambulance drivers will have your medical records. The lady on the phone will have your medical records, and probably, you know, everybody else in the world will have access to your medical records, because they do these data sharing agreements, corporation to corporation or institution to corporation or whatever. But then you've got thousands of people working for those organizations that all have access to the critical data, to the private data.
Yeah.
So it's all a farce. It's all a sham that they can keep your data private.
One of our listeners, Karen from Minnesota, she pointed out, because she worked in a field, I may still work in it, I don't know, but she was talking about how the HIPAA law is really a data sharing law masquerading as a privacy law. In other words, the first thing in the hospital they have you do was sign these agreements that they can share your data.
Yes. And insurance companies have you sign that also. When you, and, you know, if they ship your data, there's nothing in there about shipping your data overseas. And once it leaves the shore, all your privacy, all the HIPAA regulations are gone.
Yeah, it's just unbelievable.
And if a healthcare provider that does have authorized access to your information under HIPAA, if they sign a data sharing agreement with another corporation like Palantir, then Palantir is brought into the whole family of the world that is sharing your private information.
Yeah, now on this 911.gov website, they have National 911 Coordination. They say, as the federal home for 911, the National 911 Program plays a critical role in bringing stakeholders, and there's that word again, together to share information and resources among local, state, and federal agencies, National 911 associations, and other public and private groups focused on developing and providing 911 services across the 50 states and 6 territories. Now, under that, they have federal and tribal agencies. National Telecommunications Information Administration, the NTIA, located within the Department of Commerce, is the executive branch agency principally responsible for advising the President on telecommunications and information policy issues. NTIA's programs and policy making focus largely on expanding broadband Internet access and adoption in America, expanding the use of spectrum by all users, and ensuring that the Internet remains an engine for continued innovation and economic growth. Then they have, of course, naturally, Vicky, the Department of Homeland Security. They say DHS provides coordinated, comprehensive federal response in the event of a terrorist attack, natural disaster, or a large-scale emergency, while working with federal, state, local, and private sector partners to ensure a swift and effective recovery effort. And, of course, you know, anything is going to end up in a DHS database because they're collecting everything. This is why they need that big center out in Utah to store all this information. Then you have the FCC through its Public Safety and Homeland Security Bureau, working to improve, they say, public safety by encouraging and coordinating development of a nationwide seamless communication system for emergency services. United States Department of Justice, the Disability Rights Section of the U.S. DOJ, the division who handles 911 issues for people with disabilities, works to achieve equal opportunity for people with disabilities in the United States by implementing the Americans with Disabilities Act through its multifaceted approach toward achieving compliance with ADA.
Let me just interject here. That would include those LGBTQ people that want to that are behind BLM to defund the police.
Okay.
Okay. I just wanted to throw that in there.
Do you think that they can be considered a disability?
Depends on what context you're talking about it.
Let's put it this way: if
they claim that they're being discriminated against, it would be under the civil rights.
If it furthers the political agenda, they'll adopt the label.
Absolutely, yes.
Yeah, I agree with you on that. Absolutely.
I think the whole civil rights thing is really just for.
It's a ruse.
It's a ruse for to get special benefit.
Yeah.
At the expense of everybody else.
As a matter of fact, since you brought that up, let's deviate for just a second. I think this is a good time to throw this in here. Asheville, North Carolina, passed a reparations for slavery initiative. Now, when you listen to this interview, this guy, it doesn't sound so much like a reparation, but more of a tax on white people. But anyway, this is how CBS reported
I think
this.
it's for the descendants
of. I'm sorry. What'd you say?
Paying them bribe money not to make war on us.
Well, they're again going into all this social work nonsense. Supposedly that, because when they hear reparations, they're thinking, "Hey, I'm going to get a big fat check," right?
Right,
Wrong.
exactly. That's the whole point.
Wrong. Here's what you need to hear.
For the descendants of African slaves in America has long been debated. Black lawmakers on different levels of government have tried to get reparation bills approved, but are usually met with overwhelming resistance. Until now. Just this week, the City Council of Asheville, North Carolina, unanimously voted to provide reparations to black residents of the city. Not only did the council approve the reparations, but it issued an apology for the city's historic role in slavery, discrimination, and denial of liberties to black residents. Asheville's City Council member Keith Young pushed for this resolution, and he joins me now. Welcome. It's so great to have you, Keith, and congratulations on this new legislation. The reparations, of course, aren't going...
Now, this is a black council member. I just have to point that out.
...directly into someone's pocket, correct? You have a plan on how that money is going to be spent. Can you explain the plan?
That's right. Reparations is a very complex issue, and it requires a solution that looks beyond a one-time payment or check. The same systemics that allow Confederate statues to go up and disparities in policing to continue are the very same systemics that recycle itself generation after generation. What we're looking at here is there needs to be a step-by-step approach which will break down the problems that we face as a black community to its root causes and kind of identify some entry points and search for some solutions. From there, we'll be able to take action and reflect upon it and do that again, sort of a wash, rinse, and repeat, so to speak. It's set up to be something that will live beyond the current council and the current city manager to continually look at these issues that are affecting black individuals in this country. We need to be made whole in areas such as healthcare, education, employment, criminal justice, business ownership, home ownership, and overall equity, and, of course, generational wealth, where in all of those categories, black Americans have disparate numbers.
So just to be specific, are you talking about a fund that will be set aside that people can apply to for things such as education, home ownership, businesses, etc.?
In other words, Is this going to help black people?
Is that what you're talking about? A separate fund that will then, people have to apply into, or will the fund recognize areas and hand out the money?
So as far as the funding is concerned, there is no specific fund that will be set up. We have a Department of Equity and Inclusion, and we are setting up a reparations commission for our community.
In other words, more government.
As far as the funding is concerned,
that's not reparations. That's dimitude. That's the Muslim tax on non-Muslims.
There you
go.
go.
We will let you live as long as you pay this.
The extortion. It's extortion.
Yeah,
it's extortion.
Yeah.
For
and it sounds like they don't want to just leave it, at a stipend. They want houses, they want land, they want property, they want businesses. Yeah, right.
It is the very systemic racism they claim to be fighting. It is the very systemic racism. When you tax one race and you don't tax the others, that is not equal protection under the law. That is a violation. That is racism. It is institutionalized racism. Yeah. And this guy can get up here and say this is with a straight face. It's just astounding to me.
Well, apparently it's something that people like Louis Farrakhan are promoting, the idea of non-Muslims subsidizing, paying Muslims, and it's called dimitude. There's a word for it.
Yeah.
It's a thing in the Muslim world that non-Muslims have to pay a tribute or a tax for not being Muslim.
I'm going to dump the clip in the interest of time. She goes on to press him several times about a check and will the black people get anything out of this? And, every time he's like, well, we got all these programs. And basically what it really boils down to is this is another revenue stream for the city. They can
everybody who's white will leave, or white or brown. If you're not
not everybody
black, they'll leave the city.
Not everybody. There'll be enough guilty liberals there to continue to pay the tax. They'll be happy to do it.
Then they deserve it.
Yeah, they'll be happy to do it. But it's not designed to help anybody. Let's not lie about this.
It's just extortion.
He's being intellectually dishonest. This isn't designed to help anybody. It's another revenue stream for the city. That's all it is. And speaking of not helping anybody and having, everything, I've said often on the show that all of this Black Lives Matter stuff it's a communist movement masquerading as a civil rights movement. Nowhere do we see that better illustrated than in Portland, where Jackery Johnson, he's a black police officer in Portland. They released audio, the department did, where he describes the racist taunts from white Black Lives Matter protesters being leveled at him. I think it's very interesting to hear what he says here.
It says something when you're at a Black Lives Matter protest. You have more minorities on the police side than you have in a violent crowd, and you have white people screaming at black officers. You have the biggest nose I've ever seen.
What was it like in that capacity in the first few weeks when the fence was up around the Justice Center?
I got to see folks that really do want change, like the rest of us, that have been impacted by racism. And then I got to see those people get faded out by people that have no idea what racism is all about, never experienced racism, that don't even know that the tactics that they are using are the same tactics that were used against my people. And they don't even know they don't even know the history. They don't know what they're saying. Coming from someone who graduated from PSU with a history degree, it's actually frightening. They say if you don't know your history, you repeat it, and watching people do that to other people. A lot of times, someone of color, black, Hispanic, Asian, come up to the fence and directly want to talk to me. Hey, what do you think about George Floyd? What do you think about what happened about this? I go up to the fence, someone white comes up, F the police, don't talk to him. That was the most bizarre thing, because I could see it coming. I even had a young African-American girl tell me, why is it you guys aren't talking to us? I said, honestly, this is now the 23rd day of doing it. Every time I try to have a conversation with someone that looks like me, someone white comes up and blocks them and tells them not to talk. And then right when I said that, this white girl popped right in front of her. She said, He just said that was going to happen. I said, straight up. I said, I've been called the N-word. She's been called the N-word. Why are you talking to me this way? Why do you feel that she can't speak for herself to me? Why is it that you feel you need to speak for her when we're having a conversation? But then when you go to a gentrified community, and one of the first pictures I saw one of the business that was looted was a black-owned business, I'm like, they're not even from here. They don't even know what they're even doing.
What do you think of that? These communists don't want conversations. They don't want people connecting on an intelligent, intellectual level. They want screaming, emotional violence. They want people to be operating on the most base of human emotions.
Yeah, at the brainstem level. Mm-hmm. And that's what they're doing to our children in the schools.
Yeah.
They're not teaching logic. They're not teaching rational thought or analysis of ideas or anything like that. They are working on the emotions of the children from the time that they're in kindergarten all the way up. And it's monstrous, I think.
Yeah, absolutely. I wish we had another hour, but we're out of time. Thanks, Vicky, as always. I appreciate everything
Darren.
you do.
It's good.
We covered a lot of mileage today, and we'll do it all again next week, ladies and gentlemen. So join us then. In the meantime, pray for this republic. Do what you can to restore it. God bless each and every one of you, and keep your chin up. And we'll get all through all this together. And we'll talk to you next week. Bye-bye.